So I'll call the meeting, the virtual meeting to order. It's the January 5th meeting of the Fire Station Building Committee. We're meeting remotely because of the recent COVID outbreaks. So I'll take a quick roll call. Just going in order across my screen here. Blythe Robinson.
Here.
Aaron Kinney.
Present.
Justin Yanosik.
Here.
John Kent.
Here.
Aaron Hunt.
Here.
Chris Baker. Oh, Chris? Uh-oh. Chris doesn't have any sound.
Just wave, Chris. There you go.
He's saying here. Okay. I don't need to call off anybody else, just the committee, right, Blythe?
That's correct.
Okay.
Chris, I hope you can fix that because that's the extent of my lip reading skills.
Get him a whiteboard.
Yeah. Yeah, you might want to drop out and maybe come back, Chris, see if that helps. That's my advice. Oh, there you go. You got it.
Yeah. I've got like 7 settings that I can use for microphones, so one of them works.
Aaron, I got you, right? For roll call?
I hope so.
Okay. All right.
You called my name, I should say.
Okay. So first agenda item, as always, is public comment. I actually don't see anybody from the public on the meeting. Blythe, is that true? Okay.
Correct.
All right. Then we'll go right into discussion items. Please discuss building design related topics. Blythe, I don't know if you want to, there's a few here. I don't know if you want to give background on them. I don't have your right up.
There was a memo in everybody's packet about them. These were ones provided by Ron and company that they'd like to cover before, tonight, just to keep us all on track.
Yeah.
Which would include the follow-up to the select board meeting, any comments that people took that we want to discuss further. The schedule for the geotech work, coordinating that, the schedule for schematic design, how many community meetings we want to have when they are in the January to March timeframe. Take a look at the floor plans and the massing options and start the discussion on the building exterior materials. So Ron, I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know who from Ron or Jason, do one of you want to lead us through these?
Sure. So the first thing is, you all watched the presentation with the select board. I think you may have all seen that. So, they had some comments, obviously about the schedule, about the budget, about rising costs. I'm wondering if you all as building committee members had any follow-up to that. So was there anything that concerned you or anything that you took away from that as being an issue going forward?
I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the select board suggestion of maybe having a different option of a lower cost. I'm not sure how we even really approach that, to be honest. To me,
You're talking about the plan B, Kevin?
yeah, the plan B, how that would be effective. To me, it's if we all feel that this is the square footage that's needed, then I guess, is there even a plan B that would have less square footage that made sense? And then how would you incorporate that into a set of documents? That was really the only, I thought the only thing that concerned me that was discussed.
Yeah, and Kevin, I had the same takeaway in terms of big takeaways. And Chief, you might want to plug your ears for this one. But I mean, I think the answer to what option B is the temporary facilities, maybe become more permanent, right? So, I don't think that's a scenario that we want to aim for, but I think that's what the backup plan is. I think we need to convince ourselves and then the town and anybody that might ask the questions that what we're proposing as the building is the right building for the town. And I think we're headed down that road. But I don't think I think I share your concerns, Kevin. Like, I don't think we can say, well, you know what, just because we're not going to get the money approved, we can build a fire station that's half the size. Like, I mean, I think we've done a lot of work here, and more so the chief and the architect have sort of proven out that the program is what's needed. I don't think you can start lopping things off. I mean, maybe you could lop off like the community room or something, but you know, that's the chief's point. Every room kind of has 2 or 3 purposes, right? It's also their large meeting room. So you're really starting to cut off, you know, fingers and toes, it seems like at this point. So maybe it's not necessarily, you know, like a true plan B. Maybe it's maybe the response to that is similar to conversations we've had where maybe what we need to do is wait a year to bid until the market settles down, right? Because the cost of construction has gone up $100, $125 a square foot since we started this process. You know, and maybe in that year, where, you know, the plan B is a new trailer, new living quarters, right? That's similar to what we've been talking about already. And maybe we just have to figure out how to explain that. I think that approach better.
Blythe, I think Don's in the waiting room.
Go ahead, John. Thank you.
So what I took from that as far as a plan B, you know, and I agree. I don't think we should have an option here of, there shouldn't be an option of fix the temp facility and do it later. What I heard from that was the best, I guess, backup plan would be, how do you make the building smaller? And the only thing that you could do for that would be a situation where do you take off a bay or a couple of, you know, a bay, let's say. And that was the back and forth I had with the select board chair about, you realize, you know, if you lop off 2,000, 2,200 square feet, you know, you're not going to save it at $700 a square foot. You're going to save it probably at $500 a square foot. So it's something, but at that price point, you're talking about $1 million, maybe $1 million. And if this thing isn't going to pass, it's not going to not pass because of $1 million. You know what I mean? So go for it. Have a plan. Have that sort of a plan B, and then maybe as an add alternate or a deduct alternate. You know, we could talk to Dorn Whittier about how to do that. But my thought is, we don't entertain a plan B that is fix and go later, you know, or fix and bid later. We can certainly test the waters and see what's happening along the way. And we're going to have jobs that we will have bid along the way as well, to kind of keep you updated on where that is at the marketplace. And the estimators will have estimated this thing another 2 times, with our guys doing it a couple times as well. So I think we'll be able to test cost pretty well. You know, I heard the select board and heard a yes, a no, and a maybe, basically, along the way. So, you know, is that how the residents of Norfolk will kind of view this? Who knows? You know, but I think you continue to do the process. You've done a very diligent process as far as programming, and proven that this is what you need. And look, you have the old numbers to show when you tried to do it a couple other times, it's really good. So you've really kind of beat this thing up over the years and shown that this town needs 24,000 square feet. You know, whatever that number actually was that Dorn Whittier's working with. And I think it's been vetted really well. And the fact that the costs are high, that's the market, you know. You know, if you wait and they come down, good, but they're also going to have gone up the 5% year to year that you see in escalation anyway. The longer you wait, the more it's going to cost. So while you'll save, you know, I think we all hope to see prices go down. I'm not sure how far down they'll go when they do. That's the thing. And nobody, if Steve and I or Don and Ron could guess that, we could make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to
The lottery.
be my question. That was going to be my question. Is it, you know, as with many other things, like, they trend up regardless. I know that the trend up has been somewhat astronomical or like unprecedented, but is it really going to come down that far to where it's going to move the needle so much that it's worth waiting, or that it's not going to end up being we're paying basically the same thing or paying in the same ballpark? I guess that's my question or concern, is like, because the reality is it's the actual need is not getting any smaller. I think we're, just like you said, from the study as far back as 99, 2000, we're at a, everything is lining up that's what needs to be. And, just over time, we've gone from a $4 million tag to now a $20+ million tag. And I know that we'll be able to refine it and it'll tighten up and we'll get that number down. I'm very confident we can do that. Through all the processes we've done already, we've, cut a lot of costs, square footage, that kind of stuff. But, are we at a point where it is what it is?
Yeah. Why did you just?
I guess, I
I
guess,
just wanted to add to both what John and the chief said. I mean, I have to agree. If we cut off a bay, or perhaps we take out all the growth in bunk space and, make the meeting room smaller just to save some square footage, maybe we get this thing down to overall at 20 million, but are people going to be more inclined to say yes to it? I don't think so. And then possibly, when we have to turn around in just a few short years and build it back out again, it will have cost even more. So I don't see a value in trying to show them a building with, 4 bays, 5 bunk spaces, and no meeting room, and say, here, this is all we need, when we know that it's not. I don't think it will really make a difference if people aren't happy with the number, they're not going to be happy with the number at 20 million versus 25 or 18. I think if it's going to fail, it's going to fail. And I've always been concerned that we try to not have this on the same track as a school project, because they're both important projects that need to be considered by the town and not one sacrificed for the other. So waiting possibly makes that a real problem.
Justin, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I think that if we come back with something and say this is the plan B, it shows a lack of confidence in ourselves and the work that we've done. To me, all along, the plan B has been to get through bidding and then see where the bid comes in, and if necessary, delay again for another year while we have the full package of documents available. I feel like this has been done repeatedly, and there's no point in exercise in doing it again.
I agree 100%. I think that to kind of combine everybody's points, and I think the plan B is, temporarily you've got a bigger trailer, but we've got bid documents in hand, and we try again the following year. If for some reason it fails, but I think everything we've looked at to date, this is the square footage that's needed, and if we go less, we're going to be going back to the town to expand it later, and that's.
I'm just getting into that.
Don, Ron, what's the program square footage right now?
25,690.
All right.
So even at 25,000 guys, and you argue that if someone can argue that, well, the cost per square foot should be $40 less, that's $1 million. So to Blythe's point, 20 minus 1 is 19, or 22 minus 1 is 21. This, to the chief's comments as well, prices are going to go down. They're not going to go down $120 a square foot. You know what I mean? They're going to go incrementally back down while still having grown this past year with the usual escalation we see. It's a lousy time for everybody in the trades, but the reality is I don't think, we've seen this steep climb, and you can let Dawn or Ron chime in. We've seen this steep climb. I don't see us seeing a steep fall. I see us seeing something coming back. Excuse my voice. I see it coming back some, but it's not going to go back to where it was before this, this happened. So it's
right. You may find that the market normalizes itself. I think the schedule that we have right now in bidding this in November, December is probably the absolute best time to bid a project, which we've talked about earlier in terms of contractors trying to make their book for the following year. So you might see some good competition, which is really going to help drive costs as best as they can be driven. Market aside, competition amongst bidders is good. So I think that we'll be in good shape as it relates to that. We can still look at bid alternates. It certainly will be going through a value engineering exercise with you guys as it relates to perhaps the systems, to materials, to finishes, to furnishings, things like that. So we're going to work hard with you to try to bring this in at a number that's the most palatable. Will it be the most palatable to everyone? Time will tell, right? But if we go in there with comps on other projects that are similar, you can show the public that this is what's going on out there. And if you do wait, you're going to be talking about another 3, 5, 7% more the following year. So
Yeah.
a lot of moving targets.
I think, just to echo what everybody's saying, I think waiting is just going to end up costing more. The one thing that we do have to keep our eye on, and this may work out with the schedule that we have going forward, because there's a little bit of time before we plan to go out to bid, but materials that are becoming long lead times that may impact the construction schedule, because we don't want to specify something that is going to all of a sudden, become, extend the project by 2 or 3 months because we're waiting. And we do have that time to sort of investigate it. We're finding things that you don't expect to be long lead times are coming up as issues now. We just had a project where glue lam beams for some reason are becoming an issue with lead time. So we do have that time, and that's something we're going to have to plug into what we're specifying for materials, that we're not getting ourselves into a problem with availability.
So I was going to kind of, before Steve chimed in and Don, you brought it up, was that while I think, there's not necessarily a plan B, I think having add alternates and deduct alternates is smart, so that when we do get the number, we at least have some of those in our back pocket. If, I don't know, we hit some unforeseen condition during construction and we need to pull something back to stay within budget, that we have an add or a deduct alternate that we can fall back on.
Yeah, no, good point, Kevin. But one thing to keep in mind with your alternates, you need to take them at the time of bid.
Oh, okay.
You can't have those carry into construction.
But again, we're talking about corners to cut and compromises. Again, we're talking about $1-2 million. We're not talking about 5 or 10. It's and to the point that's been made a couple times here. If you wait a year or two in escalation, you're going to eat that $1 million back up. So it's and if you're going to look for a savings, if you're going to look for a plan B, it's a different plan. It's not dotting I's and crossing T's. It's a different alphabet.
Okay. Well, I think we're all saying the same thing here. I think we press on with what we have. I think we look for where we can potentially reduce costs without sacrificing the quality of the building. And I think it's kind of on all of us during the upcoming community meetings to really express the need of why we need this size building. And the construction cost is something nobody here can really control. So the square footage, to me, is what we need to focus on. Is it the right square footage? Are we making the right material selections? That sort of thing. But I don't think there's a number that we can really design to, because we don't know the number that's gonna, if the town is gonna say, yeah, well, we pass it if it's at 15 million, but not at 23. I think we just need to say, this is the square footage that we need. We're going to bid it and see what the construction costs come in at.
Kevin, you reminded me of something I've been thinking about. and this might be a question to Blythe. Like when this public safety building was approved years ago, right, was it as a both fire and police station? Are there any obligations that were made at that time that we need to try and meet, or are we sort of starting over? Like, I mean, I don't really know what I mean. Like, did we say that we were going to build a building of X square feet, or for cost per square feet of X, or, like what kind of commitments were made back when this was approved, years ago with the police station?
I think that's probably the hardest part, and what's going to dog us a bit was that they went to town meeting for $14 million for 2 projects based on the work done by the previous architect. But they hadn't finished the design yet. They just had I'm not sure exactly what stage of design they were at, but they weren't done. So all they knew it was going to be was the, what, 21,990? Is that the number that I'm recollecting? And told town meeting, we can get this done, without really knowing that they could. So I think it'd be unfair to this committee or to the town now to say that we're going to meet a commitment from then, because it wasn't even complete information. And then the police station cost, if it was supposed to cost 7, it cost 10.6. So to say that this project's now got to meet a certain standard or a certain amount is impossible and unrealistic.
Yeah, I think we know the square footage that we need. If we can sharpen it up at all over the coming process, we can do that and be smart about what we select to try and get the most cost effective per square foot that we can, that meets the chief's and the department's needs. But I think personally, that's how I think we need to progress.
Okay, so the second thing we wanted to talk about was, and I don't know if you want to take this and yeah.
I just see someone's hand up that says iPhone.
Hey guys, this is Matt Hafner. I just want to clarify my understanding of how that was approved before. It was a renovation of the 14 Sharon Ave and a renovation addition. There was not square footage. So it wasn't 21,000. It was just a renovation and addition.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the next thing, Blythe, that was on your list, or Kevin, what's the next topic?
I think it's schedule of geotech work and coordinating with the town's excavator.
Okay, so
I have.
just an update on that. We've been working with Matt, and we're looking at the week of January 17th. Is that correct, Matt?
No, it's I believe it's next. I thought it was yes.
It's the 13th, isn't it?
Yes, it was next
13th.
Thursday.
Yep. So we're going to have the town's excavator, or the contract company that they have, the excavator, is going to be there to dig some test pits, and the geotech engineer is going to be there to have a drill rig to drill some borings, and we're going to see how it goes and get that one day out of the way, and then maybe have a second day if necessary. So the 2 tasks that we're looking to do is to confirm the previous ledge removal, what was taken out, what wasn't taken out, versus fractured rock possibly being left in place. And it could be fine. We just want to confirm how that was left. And then we do want to drill a couple more borings. 2 things we have to find on site is suitable foundation locations, and we need to find a spot that doesn't have a lot of ledge so we can get in the underground stormwater system. So that's our goal for the geotech work.
And I'm sorry, what day did you say that was happening, Ron?
The 13th.
The 13th. That's Thursday.
So a week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
We should have the report probably by the end of the month, if not early February.
Okay.
After they go out and do the field investigations.
I know they're not calling for a lot of snow on Friday. Would that affect their work at all? Or the areas? I mean, the areas are what, in pavement, so they can be cleared if necessary.
I think given the timing of the snow and when the borings are going to take place, shouldn't be.
Okay, the next one I have is schedule of schematic design activities and deliverables.
Yep. So I've got a PowerPoint here that I'd like to share. Let's see. Let me try to share my screen. All right, perfect. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So the deliverables and the schedule that we're looking at right now is we're thinking that we can have a community meeting in February or March. Sorry, I should say March, February. And what we're trying to do is figure out when is a good time for us to piggyback on an existing town event, right? So if the school or the community has anything going on in February or March, I've kind of stayed away from January just because of the whole COVID thing rising up. But if we can have a couple of meetings in March and February, just to keep the community aware of what's going on and where we're heading with this. And we can set that date anytime. So we would look to Matt and Blythe to kind of let us know possibly something going on in the community. So, we're trying to limit the idea of bringing people out just for a special meeting. And we can certainly do that, especially if we wanted to do something at the fire station like we did last time, where, maybe we present in the bays again. People can actually see the fire station.
Kate, I'm going right now.
So Ron, a couple of thoughts to your point there, right? I mean,
Yep.
Early February, probably considered the same thing as January in terms of COVID, right? So probably we want to do after the week of the 7th, right? The week of the 21st is town school break. That's going to be a bad week.
Okay.
Right. So Valentine's Day week is the 14th or the last week of February, which is really March. So I think you're really talking about early March.
Okay.
I'm just talking out loud.
No, you bring up a couple of good points. I mean, one is we also want to get enough work done to actually be able to present something that the building committee has seen and the working group has seen. And it kind of like takes a big step forward, to get some good feedback from the community. And then going beyond that, we have a delivery date right now scheduled for March 10th. And that would be to deliver, and I'll show you the list of deliverables here in a second. That would be to deliver all the schematic design deliverables with the estimate. And the reason we have Thursday, March 10th laid out is because we know you're going to want that on the Thursday so that we can then have a building committee meeting on Wednesday, the 15th, and have that approved. Obviously, we're not just going to deliver this on March 10th. We're going to have a lot of working group meetings in between and some building committee meetings in between. But that's the deliverable right now, is middle of March, is to get an approval to begin design development. And then we would assume having a new estimate now at the end of schematic design, as well as some deliverable information, and I'll show you the list in a second, that we would then come up with more community meetings in April and possibly May or June. So 2 more meetings we're thinking before school lets out in June, and lots of people start taking their vacations. But to have those 2 more community meetings between schematic design and the end of design development, again, is going to give us a lot of feedback, right? So we'll hear what the community has to say. We'll be able to present progress. The end of June, June 23rd, is the Thursday we're thinking of delivering the design development deliverables, again with another estimate, so that you can approve that on June 29th. And if that gets approved on June 29th, then we start construction documents. As John said, we're going to have periodic estimates. So there's another estimate we're planning on doing mid-September. And that's about 60% of the way through construction documents. But I think as a team, we can all review that and say, you know, when's a good time to get this estimate. The closer we get to the end with the estimate, the better the drawings are going to be, the better the scope's going to be defined in the drawings. So the more realistic the estimate's going to be, closer to a bid. We're thinking of another community meeting after DD is approved in September. September 21st, we'll have another community meeting because, again, now we've got even more information, better estimates. And then we're going out to bid, completing the CDs in November and thinking that we'd be bidding the project November 10th. We could even have a community meeting during that bid period. We can tell people that it's out on the street. If you know any local electricians or local tradesmen, we might even invite a lot of local companies to that November meeting to get them excited about the project to see if they want to bid on the project. And then we're thinking the bids would be due on December 22nd. So just before the holidays. That would then allow you to have your town meeting and your vote in January. And then as soon as the vote is approved, we can execute the construction contract. So the contractor can start getting submittals and schedules and schedule of values and things like that squared away and then have a commencement on site for March 2023. And then that then takes us through the end of the job in August of 2024, occupy the new station. We would then demo and complete site work in August and September and be 100% complete in October. So that's kind of the bigger milestone schedule that I think, and I'll send this out to you, Blythe, just, you know, so we can all take a look at it. We can start filling in actual dates with our calendars. And then once those dates are assigned, we can then backfill with the tasks that need to be done in the periodic building committee and working group meetings.
The only comment I would make right now is that the way the select board developed the charge, the committee, it requires, you know, a check-in at the end of each phase and a kind of approval to move forward. So just thinking, you know, jumping to the end of June, the committee might be able to meet, you know, around June 23rd and approve the design development concept, but the select board probably doesn't have a meeting till the beginning of July. So
Okay.
we'll have to figure out either they are comfortable and don't need us to check in as often, or we need to figure out those dates and get them on the schedule as well.
And then the other question we have, which we kicked around a little bit, was, you know, do we have that town meeting in January, or do we have the town meeting in March? And that's and then another question for the town, simply because, you know, because I think the last time we were talking about this, we were saying we want to avoid winter conditions, right, as best we can. And it's kind of over that time period where, you know, general contractors, you know, in January or February, you know, may take that time to bid. So we're putting together a schedule that we know works, frankly, if you do the vote in January, but if you wanted to push it off later, I mean, that's up to you. And I think, Blythe, in that conversation, you actually said the more time we get, the better the drawing should be, right?
Yes.
The one thing we'll need to coordinate with any of this, Ron, is the how long you can hold a bid for. Which is
Right.
typically.
Yeah, I mean, we've had success, Don, up to about 70, 75 days, as long as it's in the specs. The only problem we'll have, though, is that if bidders will be able to hold their prices for that long from their suppliers, that's more the issue.
Exactly. Yep.
So we've had good, if we execute the contract for construction, they can complete their buyout. So they're not holding any prices. And, you know, I think the issue then is, you know, the start of construction on site, like when can they actually mobilize the site? But to your point, John, we could also specify, you know, they can do temporary, like we could specify something that says you just can't get into the, you know, the old building, I guess.
Well, no, I mean, Ron, you could also start award a job in January and tell them construction can't start till mid-March. I mean, that's, you know, and that gives them 2 months to do all their paperwork and do their buyout and get you submittals, that, and hit the ground running when the earth melts. I think that's also a fine, and then instead of a 16-month duration, I know that's what we're talking theoretically, it becomes 18 with the acknowledgement that those first 2 months are really administrative, and if they can get out there and we have a warm winter, great. And if not, they start in March when everyone else usually does anyway.
Yeah,
I
I
talked
would,
to the town clerk about the timing, just to alert her that we would possibly need, a special town meeting and a special election in January. That's not a problem. It's more of just a coordination between her and the select board and advisory and everybody else, that's the timing we're going to have between the cost of holding the special election is about $5,000, which I would think the project would bear, since that's the only reason to have it. And the cost for the town meeting is not much to arrange. Couple
Yeah,
grand.
I think we stand a better chance if we're bidding this thing in November to get better prices. But then I think we have to have the town meeting, January is probably at the latest, because otherwise, to John's point, you're going to get inflated prices if we're telling them they got to hold their price until we have a meeting in February or March.
Yeah.
That they're not going to get formally approved until then. But I think if we can realistically hit that November bid date, I think, people have brought it up before, and I think it's a truism that people are trying to set up their projects for the spring at that time, that I think you're going to get, personally, I think we're going to get more action and better action on it than if we bid it in March.
Agree.
I know that puts a little more pressure on you guys, Don and Ron, but I think we have a better chance of getting a better number at that November 10th bid the project.
Yeah, and this is a better schedule than what we originally talked about, which was having all the bids in hand in November. So, it's it gives us a little bit more time.
It's a middle ground, I think.
Yeah. And then the list of submittals, the deliverables, if you will. Let me move this guy over here. So, our philosophy has always been that the more information we get done early, the better off we're going to be. So we've got some bulleted things here that come right out of our contract, Blythe. So the code compliance and MAB compliance analysis is required by the contract. The phase 1 assessment on site is also required. The life cycle analysis, the utility incentive programs are required by the contract, and the plans depicting the gross area in comparison to the study conclusions. And what that'll be is if the building ends up being a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger than the study conclusions, I suspect you're going to want to know, the way the contract is written, it says you're going to want to know why, like what happened. Why is it bigger? Why is it smaller? And then in the contract, it also said, to finish the BIM model and design for approval. And just so everybody knows what that means, you're going to get site plans as part of that. So civil engineering always has to be in front of the bus, right? Because we got permitting to do for a project like this. So the site plans will include utility and drainage, site demolition, grading, which will show contours and finished floor elevations. We're going to need that for a good schematic estimate, all of that. In addition to that, we'll have site layout and details. Again, we're going to need that and want that for the estimate. Stormwater management, the systems that go along with that, we know are going to be underground. They have to do the modeling for that in order to do the drawings, in order to define it on the schematic drawings for the estimate. And then we're going to have a schematic landscaping plan. And, that's going to go hand in hand with these upcoming planning board meetings that we have in terms of what is that scope, right? What is the scope of the green belt, for instance? And do we continue to pursue the green belt on the western side against the church? So in addition to site information, you're going to have architectural floor plans, a roof plan, exterior elevations, 2 exterior renderings. And then we always kind of do some axons of the interior. It's kind of like room criteria sheets to see how these spaces are working out in 3D, which will be generated directly from the Revit model. With that, there's outline product and system specifications that the team is putting together. And then that's all defined on the owner's project requirements, which we have a beginning of based on the study. And that's a document that we're going to try to get done pretty quickly here to send out to everybody to redline, make sure we get the requirements 100% down pat. And that's going to lead to a basis of design, which pretty much spells out everything we're going to need in terms of systems and products. And then obviously there's the estimate. So I know we only have 10 weeks, but we do have the resources and ability to get this done. And we have a rather large team. So just to give you an idea of that, here's a list of the individuals who will be working in the next 10 weeks. So,
10 months.
Yep.
Months.
10 weeks. So schematic design is 10 weeks.
I'm
And
sorry, I thought you were talking about the full project, sorry.
Come on,
Yeah,
man,
10
he was on
months.
a roll.
Sorry.
we're golden. Time is no issue. So, and what we do want to say is that, obviously all of these people are not working full time. But for instance, myself, I'm at least 50% time. As the project designer, Jason's at least 50% time. Obviously, Don wants to oversee what everybody's doing. We have an interior designer who needs to get involved, code reviewer, spec writer who's doing the outline for these things. And we're going to start Revit modeling, right? Because, and we don't even know right now how many people it's going to take to get that onto developed enough for the consultants so that they can use it. So we right now have one person, but we suspect it's going to be two by the time we're done. The civil engineers, again, they've got a project manager and a designer / engineer who's putting this together, and then a drafts person who's putting together all these presentation drawings for a planning board. Structural engineer, they typically don't do their load modeling analysis in Revit. They have a load calculation modeling software that they use. So they'll have a modeler doing that along with an engineer and designer working with us. The energy modeler has to get going because we got to work with efficient mass saves. Sorry, mass saves is going to want to obviously have their energy charrette with us and start talking to us about the energy piece. And then mechanical, plumbing, fire protection, and electrical engineers, same thing, right? All those folks are working on the project to get this done in 10 weeks. And then we have our landscape team putting together the landscaping. And then obviously there's the cost estimator towards the end. So I know it's 10 weeks, but we've got a lot of horses in the stable here who can get this done for you.
Hey,
And that's our
Ron,
goal.
it's not listed, but the structural engineer is going to have, they're doing their work in Revit, correct?
They are.
Okay.
Yes, but so to that point, it's a good point. So what's the difference between schematic design and design development, right? So in schematic design, we spend a lot of time with all these team members scoping out this project. Like, let's make sure we know exactly what we're doing, like what the scope of everything is. So the structural engineer, as you know, right, we want to define, are we using bar joists, steel shapes, is it composite deck? And that goes along with what Steve was saying earlier about if we know that something's a long lead time item right now, let's not use that system, right? And so same thing with the civil and the mechanical and the electrical engineers. There's a lot of load crunching that happens during schematic design. In the next phase, design development, is when you're really going to start seeing the Revit flying from the engineers. That's when the structural engineer really starts putting things into Revit. Same thing with mechanical and especially mechanical and plumbing, who are going to start laying these things out in design development in the Revit modeling. But for the schematic design, the Revit modeling they're going to be doing is setting up heating zones. Like, in other words, what are the thermal zones within the building and things along those lines. So just lots of folks are going to enable us to get this done. Yep.
Rookie question, what is Revit?
So Revit is
Sorry, ask. John's laughing at me.
I had that thought live. I'm going through everybody on the screen. I'm like, they should know.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Was I
Revit
supposed
is
to know?
No, it's okay.
it's like saying Levi jeans, right? So there's several different 3D modeling programs in the world
Okay.
today. And we use Revit there's also
Thank you.
ArchiCAD and other ones. So
I don't
Yeah.
buy that. I don't know what it is.
exactly. Well, that's a good point about buying it. It costs a lot of money every year to have a license for every one of these seats.
Basically, guys, everything used to be done in CAD, and
Yeah.
Revit has kind of taken over as kind of the software of choice. And what's great is that it allows the different trades to all work in the same thing. And it's kind of a platform that's kind of crossing designers now, which is great, and it gives you a much easier ability to 3D render what you have. Before, when you worked in CAD, you had a nice two-dimensional drawing. To have it come up in 3D to show a committee what it looks like was a whole other effort to be done. Now these things are all getting defined as they're being drawn. When I say defined, I mean windows and doors and all these other things, so that all of a sudden, then when they can generate that model, not weekly, but at these periodic milestones, you will get to walk through the building virtually, just as a side benefit of this software that everyone's using nowadays.
Good explanation, John.
So that's the gist of kind of what we're delivering them and what the time frame is and who's involved. Obviously, so when we get into design development and construction documents, we're actually adding people to this team. So right now, we want to do the level of work required to deliver what you need to make a decision to approve schematic design. That's the design we want. That's the look of the building. That's where we're going with this. Let's go forward. Once we get that approval, then we can add resources to this team. Every office, all of our consultants and us, we're going to be adding people to the team, because now it's production. Now it's all about production, right? We want to develop that design in a production mode, and then we want to document that for construction documents in production mode. Because that's where, that's where the information, like you say, Blake, the more resources or the more time you have on a team to get this done, the fewer issues you're going to run into. So, is that so to answer the next? What's the next?
Well, I just had two scheduling questions. If we're we're talking about schedule. I think these community meeting dates are good. I guess Blythe or anyone else on the call, are you aware of any community events that might align with these? The only one that jumps out at me that I know of is, in June, we typically have concerts on the Common that maybe we could do something before or after that, possibly, or at least have something set up that people can see it. You get a lot of people there, especially people with young families that might not normally come to community events.
I would suggest we ask the moderator for some time at town meeting.
Yeah.
Be able to give a quick presentation on May 10th.
Okay.
He doesn't usually like to have long presentations, but perhaps he would either we do it during the middle of the meeting or ask people if they'd like to stay at the end or something like that.
Yeah.
So April is a lot of meetings, just getting ready for town meeting. I'm sure we can find something in there that would work.
Yeah, and I think, if there isn't one, Blythe, I think we could probably have another one at the fire station. I think that's a good fallback plan, but I think these are good. Personally, I think these are good times. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
In October, from the 9th to the 15th is Fire Prevention Week. That's kind of an ideal time to do something at the fire station. Kind of wraps everything all together.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And when you getting to the point of going to town meeting, then I think it needs to be more, my suggestion is it's more intense, offering to have coffee with small groups and going to the small business, association and, and any other, going to the senior center and making a presentation, all those sorts of things, get on every schedule we can to talk to anybody who will listen to us, who might be interested.
Okay.
And excuse me, in April, I think school vacation is the week of the 18th.
Yep.
another week to avoid.
Mhm.
And then the only other thing, and this can be something, you don't have to necessarily go through this at the meeting tonight, Ron, but when you do put together a full project schedule, I'd be curious, when I read through the feasibility study, the civil engineer's narrative, I mean, there's a lot of permitting that's going to go into this, including possibly special permits. You know, how does that all dovetail into a relatively quick schedule? When do we need to hit certain dates?
So it's a great question. We actually reviewed all that with the civil engineer today. They're thinking that they're going to have their permit drawings basically 100% done by the end of DD. And when I say 100% permit drawings, it doesn't mean 100% bid documents, right? So what we're thinking of is, we know we have a meeting, which Blythe, we were looking online and it doesn't seem like they have a planning board meeting scheduled this month yet.
So they made
It's the
it's
11th.
scheduled for the
11th.
11th. It's just they haven't posted the meeting yet.
Okay.
So be in touch with Rich McCarthy about that in terms of where you are in the schedule and all that. I would think it would be posted by Thursday at the latest.
Okay. So I'll send him an email tomorrow and give him a
Yeah,
call.
please. We'll call him tomorrow because they should be finalizing it. Tomorrow's Thursday.
Okay. So I'll send him an email tonight and follow up with a call tomorrow. So when we meet on the 11th, we want to continue that conversation about setbacks, things like that. And Blythe, I think they're going to look to you and say, you know, is it something the town wants to change the zoning for the church? Because if that's the case, then you don't need a special permit. And if they decide, no, they are going to get, because I think when we started this whole project, I think you and Matt had said if we could avoid a special permit, that would be best. And right now, I believe the way we're looking at this, the only possible special permits we could have is, number one, this setback against the church, and number two, the number of parking spots. You know, I think when we're looking at this, we pretty comfortable thinking we're fitting within all the other ordinance requirements. You know, we've got the height requirement all squared away, we believe. And so just kind of looking at this, we may end up in the special permit thing. And it's just something that we all need to decide if that's a route we want to take. So anyway, that'll be the meeting on the 11th, is to go over some of that stuff. And then maybe we can talk to the planning board about coming back, and we can talk with our civil engineers about interim meetings, because I think we do want to make that formal presentation at the end of DD to the planning board for formal approval. And then the question, Erin, really to you is, when does the design review board get involved? Because I was online looking at the requirements and I thought it mentioned about coming to the design review board before going to planning.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the best answer is there's no formal outline of when the right time to go is, but as the design review board is a recommendation board to the planning board, one would argue that you should go to the design review board before you go to the planning board. The design review board doesn't have scheduled meetings, so just put in a request to the town, probably Betsy, and we'll schedule a meeting, you know, sort of as needed. So
okay.
The more heads up you give us, the better chance you'll get of something sooner rather than later.
Okay.
I can reach out to one or two people at the church and feel them out. I'd call Jim Lehan, who I know, and see what his take is on a change of zoning for the church, just because, you know, he's been very involved over the years. So, and he certainly want to see this project happen, and just see what I get in terms of a feedback and report back.
But, you know, but talking to that a little bit though, like change of zoning is a public vote.
It's a town meeting vote.
Right. I mean, and a special permit is an approval by the planning board.
Yep.
So, I mean, which one's easier?
Less required votes seems easier, but you know, what's the town feels the right thing. I mean, I think is the bigger question.
Yeah, I think, Aaron, when we met with them, I mean, many of you were present during that meeting, right, online. So, I mean, the impression that I think I walked away with was they were saying that rezoning the church might be the easiest thing to do. And they are the planning board. So, and I think they were making that case because they're looking at this as, well, why would they issue a special permit, right? It's a residential property up against a business zoned property. We're doing, or we talked to them and they agreed that the requirement for the green belt and the setbacks, we're not going to get a variance for that. I mean, we actually asked for a, you know, we got a feel from them to go out and get a special permit to leave the existing parking in place that currently is within the east setback. Actually, I have a little map here that I can show you. And they were not all, it's like, so right here, we asked, you know, we've got some existing parking, right? And it's been there for a very long time. And even though we're building a new building, can we just shim and overlay this and leave that parking in place rather than demo it and then build more parking just to push it back a certain number of feet? And they said, you know, they're not in favor of even thinking about it. On the other side, same thing, right? This is zoned residential right now. And that's where they actually started talking about, maybe we just rezone the church, because technically the church is non-compliant because they don't have their green belt and their setbacks. And, you know, our project wouldn't be either. So, I mean, it's a good conversation, and that's actually what we wanted to discuss on the 11th.
I just think rezoning something is a can of worms. I would think a bigger can of worms than a special permit, but I'm not going to speak for the town. I just think it's in our best interest to continue this conversation with the planning board as soon as possible and come to some resolution.
So it's a great point, because we do have it on the 11th. So the more folks who can show up on the 11th and, you know, kind of like make the case for this. And Blythe, even if someone from the church, I know that there was a woman who got up and spoke to the planning board that night, right?
Yeah, so Donna Jones did. And like I said, I know several people that I can call and I'll at least have a, you know, conversation with them offline and see what feedback I get.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's the process we need to take with the planning board. You know, having this setback right here, getting rid of those two lines, whether we build the green belt or not. Because even if we get rid of these two lines, we could build a nice fence along here, right? So getting rid of those two lines is going to help the design a lot. That's all.
Would time allow that we could get to the May town meeting and ask for a rezoning? And then if that got shot down, try and get the special permit? Would we have enough time to do that?
Probably.
Possible approach.
Okay, yeah, maybe we kind of offer that to them. Kind of do two tracks simultaneously, right? We can start the process of the special permit application while at the same time setting up a vote to rezone it.
I mean, we just recently made some zoning changes to the B1 district. It took 3 years.
Yeah. Aaron, you're making a very good case. You know, it does take a lot to get these votes passed. So, all right. The next thing was design, I think.
Current floor plans, and detailed review of massing options.
Right. So we where the floor plans? Well, I didn't have the. Let's see.
Ron, before we go off this subject, just real quick, I think for the planning board conversation, it would be very helpful to have some images like this, or renderings, or not necessarily a rendering, but a view, or even photos to show what the existing conditions are for this conversation, right? right? I mean, to show that the church is in one location, that there's this giant field of asphalt, and then there's the fire station property, right? And that the condition on that side of the property is very different than the condition on the other side of the property, where we'll go through the effort of respecting that residential property, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We did show a site plan, but I can easily get some photographs that show it from standing from the other side of the street, the other
Yeah.
side of Main Street.
I think
And just
I
say,
think the 3 dimensions would be very helpful in this case.
Yep. Okay. So for anybody who missed the meeting last week or the select board meeting, the east-west option that kind of sits behind the existing fire station, when that gets knocked down, this becomes the main entrance. And again, this is just a massing study, just to show the scale and the pitched roof idea. So we can enhance this entrance so that, when you're on Main Street after the building is done, there's a clear, even if the meeting room had a little bit more glass on it or something, there's a clear indication of where the main entrance is, and we keep in the spirit of the zoning that requires a certain amount of glass. But this is one idea that kind of makes it a little bit more residential, if you will. And then a second idea in terms of the massing was, and again, this is the same plan, just detailed a little bit differently, that again has the pitched roofs, again, keeps it in scale. And one of the things that I think is going to make a big difference here is what materials are we using, right? So is this a masonry building, or is it a clapboard building, for instance? Is it a mix? And is there a lot of differentiation in texture and material on the exterior that, again, helps further break down the scale? So these are just 2 options that we had shown. And we know that the last time we met with the full committee talking about the plans was, how visible is this front door going to be to the public, right, when they show up to the site? So if we're able to have sort of some parking on the east side of the property, like we just talked about, and then, this is a very quick sketch. So if we develop sort of a park area, this small park that lined up right with the entrance, it kind of separates the visitor parking from the apron for the fire department, sets up this nice green space in between. And again, however this mass gets detailed, could really be something that is inviting, a little bit more transparent and welcoming to the community. So that's where we're at now. And I think we would like to hear from the committee what your thoughts are about option 1 and option 2.
Oh, I'll speak first. I know. So we looked at these at our last meeting. I like both of them. I think we looked at some other ones that were more kind of mansard or hip style roofs that I didn't like quite as much. I guess if I had to pick one, well, now the option numbers just dropped off, but
yeah,
I like the one on the bottom a little better personally.
Here.
Yeah. But I've got nothing against the one above it. I just kind of like the one below it a little bit better.
And something to be said too is both of these have a different, as you all know, these pitched roofs are adding, they're included in the cost of construction, right? So with these pitched roofs, we need to decide, is it less expensive to do something like this that has a lot of dormers and sort of a backside to it? Or you can see that we turned, one roof, this particular roof runs east-west, the ridge does. And then these run north-south, because if we do a little north-south ridge, then we can just have a simple shed in between connecting them, as opposed to a longer ridge, which requires a different type of framing. And we honestly don't know the cost difference between each one. Right now, we don't, I should say. But obviously, we'd have to figure out, just a quick study with the structural engineer, and maybe John and Steve could help us on the OPM side to decide, which one of these would be less expensive and more simpler to build, because ease of construction and complexity of the roof adds to the cost.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to know that if there is a significant cost difference between the two, structurally and architecturally, from looking at how I would do it, it looks like the one on the bottom would be simpler to frame, but the framing is not everything, because you could basically frame a bunch of gables and then you're building some over trusses on top, but
We might be getting in front of ourselves a little bit here though,
Yeah.
too. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I think you need to look at this in the frame of reference of the design guidelines for downtown too, right? I mean, there's some very specific criteria that are identified to meet, right? And I'd argue that the one on the bottom of the screen is closer to that criteria than the one on the top, right? The one on the top is a little bit more modern. I think the design sentiments for the town are a little bit more conservative, right? So you could take the bottom image, and in order to make it a little bit more modern, you could dress it up like a modern farmhouse, right? So maybe that's where your materiality comes in. Whereas I think with the top one, by the time you start adding the materials to it, it makes it even more modern and it starts to get a little busy. Just talking out loud.
Well, Aaron, that's the perfect point, right? Because it's either going to be something that is a little bit more contemporary or modern, or it's going to be a little bit more residential, more residential feel to it. And I honestly think that's the difference between the two that we're looking at, right? The one on the bottom certainly is more residential.
Yeah, and again, I think if you're digging through the design guidelines for some clues, I think it actually talks to using wood looking siding rather than brick too, right? So, I mean, I think you can talk about, is masonry the right product for a 50-year building? And you can make some of those cases, or maybe you could make a case that, you're using masonry in appropriate locations on certain parts and facades of the building, rather than the entire facade. But, so I also think, I guess, in full transparency, it's worth showing 2 or 3 options to the public too. I mean, I don't think we should come in and say this is it, right? I mean, you guys have mentioned that in the past before as well. I mean, maybe everyone will think that the modern is the way to go, and we'll go in that direction. But
Yeah, to Ron's point originally, though, I think if you have kind of a rough order of magnitude difference in cost between various options, if everyone liked the more modern configuration, but it doesn't necessarily meet the town vision as well as the one on the bottom, maybe there is a reason to go with the one on the top if everyone likes it and it's X.
I think it's a slippery slope. I mean, we started this conversation by saying, if you want to save money, you got to lop off an arm, right? You're not going to save money by, using, a little less wood framing in the roof on the project. I mean, yeah, you might save $100,000, right? But I don't know that that's a design image decision that you want to make for the next 50 years, right?
No, I guess I was thinking that if everyone liked the one on the top and there was some pushback from, the design review board or the planning board, if that's not the vision they have for the town, but everyone liked it, maybe there's some backup to why we're choosing that one. It's a cost related decision. Or the cost helps make the decision, I guess. Just a thought.
And it is a funny situation because both of these, when you look at them, you think, oh, wood construction. So none of this is actually going to be wood, right?
Yeah.
It's all steel, non-combustible framing. So it does, and we do it all the time. It's kind of make something look like a residential structure, even though it is a category 4 commercial construction. So, there's just a lot of things you can do with wood that doing in steel have a whole different cost implication, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think you could also. How am I going to say this? I think maybe these two options are a little too close together, right? Trying to keep to that residential feel. I think if you took the one up top and you made it a little bit more modern, and you made the drive-through bays much more transparent,
Mhm.
And you took advantage of that steel construction, maybe you expressed it a little bit differently, right? And the modern version looked a little bit lighter and more transparent to the public, whereas the lower one was a little bit more traditional and not as transparent. You know, I think that's a greater difference to spark more conversation about which,
Mhm.
you know, which image is the right one to go for.
Okay. All right. I mean, this is good feedback. So I think we can continue to work these, and I think the next step might be to stop putting some skin on these, right? And start talking about what is the materials, and as you said, Aaron, you know, take a look at the lower one becoming more residential, like as a farmhouse, things like that. The upper one becoming a little bit more modern, or we even put a third one in there that is much simpler to build, and more conventional with the steel framing, and just takes on a completely different type of language using that modern material use. So we can do that. So Aaron, one question that came up with the planning board, and they told us that you'd be the best person to ask about this, is the use of flat roofs as sort of accents, right? So just in looking at the top one here, you know, what if we came up with something that looked, you know, in favor of what the town would want, and then these little pieces that are in between were flat instead of shed roof? You know, is that something that and it's just your opinion of what the design review board would think, but just like we felt out the planning board when it came to the setbacks, what would your thoughts be on that?
I'll answer that this way. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, trying to figure out how to say that these two options here both look similar from it almost looks like a collection of little houses, or a collection of, it's like almost like a village type thing, right? There's a lot of similarity to what may be three distinct volumes, right? There's sort of a right volume, a left volume, which is small, and then a center volume. And they're all kind of extruded in a similar fashion that way. What if it wasn't so village-like? Like, what if you got on the top one, what if you got rid of the gable end in the middle, right? And you had the gable end on the left-hand side, you had the gable end on the far right-hand side, and then maybe it was a little bit more flat in between, right? Something like that. Just that, I mean, something that's a language that's very different from the two that are on the screen, right? The volume is somewhat similar, but the language is very different.
Okay.
Or even the community room, right? Like, you know, maybe you make the argument that the community room, you know, maybe the community room doesn't need a pitched roof, or maybe it does, and maybe that's probably one of the better rooms to have a higher roof. Or maybe you argue that the right floor to floor height in the community room is really 11 feet or 12 feet or 13 feet, and you put a flat roof on the community room, but the flat roof on the community room becomes something that serves a purpose for the fire station. Right? Maybe it becomes a green roof, or it becomes a patio area, or it becomes a practice facility, or something.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Yep. So that's the conversation we had with the planning board, which was, you know, would little areas of flat roof be okay? So maybe we will come up with a couple different renditions of that, right? And share it with everybody and see what everybody thinks.
Yeah, I think there's, I wouldn't, yes, I would certainly look at it. And I would think that if you could make the case that the flat roof provides some service or some value, then it would, you know, it would be beneficial to the case, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it would certainly be a way to help separate some of these masses out and would be a bit of a cost savings too, right? Because we're basically overframing in many of these areas and we're not in a position to take advantage of a lot of it, of the attic space. Right now, we haven't explored it fully. So yeah, we got a bit of work to do as we recognize. Good to get your feedback, Aaron.
Yeah, I guess one last thing, and I'll stop dominating the mic here. But the process to this point has been very inside out, and not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but it's the images we're seeing here are very clearly a representation of the plan that's inside the building. And we're talking about maybe saving some money in the roof or saving some money by a flat roof, but what if the volume of the building became efficient and some of the program moved around to accommodate the efficient volume, right? So the efficiencies, some of the cost that's involved with all these nooks and crannies is made up for the fact that the structure is so efficient to build.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, good point.
Any other thoughts or comments?
I don't have anything.
Okay. So what was next on the list?
Discussion related to building exterior materials, review of current floor plans.
Yeah.
I don't know if we already touched on the exterior materials or if that is more in depth than this.
Yeah, we just wanted to get your feel sort of in a general term tonight as to whether or not you were thinking masonry or clapboard, because we did see, in the design regulations about the pitched roofs and the clapboards and such. And we just wanted to know, like, does it make sense to have, should it be a masonry building? Your existing fire station is masonry, brick. And if not, should at least a certain portion of it be like, down the bottom, closer to the ground or between the doors or things like that. We just wanted to get your feel for that. Or if you were more inclined to say, yeah, we are expecting a brick building or we are expecting a clapboard building, right? Because that then allows us to do what Aaron's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I personally didn't have any expectations of exactly what it would look like. I guess my gut reaction is maybe as much clapboard as possible, considering the other town buildings. But I think this is a fire station, so I don't know, maybe it's along the base, maybe it's between the overhead doors, something a little more durable, possibly.
Okay. And then, my next question about exterior materials is, if we do a pitched roof like this, one thing we've noticed around town is there's a lot of use of asphalt shingles. But then there is some use of metal roofs. And so just in thinking from a building committee perspective, are you more in favor of the asphalt roof look, which is the shingles, or would you be expecting a long-term sort of standing seam metal roof?
And I would love to get a metal roof, but I mean, how much of the roof are we going to see?
Right.
I'm assuming there's going to be PV up there at some point, right?
Oh, absolutely. So, in the back of the building, it's probably going to be flat because it doesn't have the requirements that face the street. But when you are facing the street, is there a benefit for any of these pitched areas to have a metal roof as opposed to the asphalt shingles? We're thinking of Matt, down the road of replacing or repairing shingles 20 years from now.
There's a cost difference between the two, though.
Yeah, there
right.
is.
There is a cost difference.
I think you're making the argument that you're going for a 50-year building and a metal roof. We may be in a situation where we need to do a bid alternate for shingles.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say that might be our first bid alternate, or if there's, I don't know if they need to be in a particular order, but if that's something that, either or worked with the architectural design, maybe that's a bid alternate, because that is my immediate concern, is the metal roof is going to be pretty expensive.
They do have to be in order.
I would say though, too, I think some of it's going to come down to, I hate making material decisions without, the full picture, right? And
Yeah.
to get
Yep.
to the, the idea of materiality, right? I'm looking at the top one again, right? Like maybe the gable end buildings are clapboard, right? Or maybe they're the masonry ones. I'll say they're the masonry ones, right? And then the I'll call the infill buildings, that infill between the gable ends is it's not clapboard. We even dial it back, and it's really like it's a metal shed, right? Industrial chic kind of metal shed. We really make it transparent. We really amp it up, and it becomes more of a metal enclosure, right? So you've got this sort of like dark gray metal enclosure, a bay area, and then you've got some brick gable end type buildings, or maybe the flat face that faces the street is the masonry, and the wrap around it is clapboard, right? So now you've got a nice collection of materials, but they make sense to the volumes that they're in, right?
Yeah, we're not looking for decisions tonight. This is a good conversation because now we've introduced metal siding as well.
Yeah.
And, a nice sort of board and batten metal siding.
Right, but now if you want to design the metal siding in such that the metal roof can't be value engineered out, right? You take these gable ends and you wrap the sides with metal, you wrap it up over the roof, and you make it a full volume expression, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then maybe the masonry is not just brick, but maybe we can start looking at some, CMU or stone.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of questions, and I think that was the reason to bring it up tonight was if you're open to that whole palette of exterior materials, then we'll certainly, take the liberties to come back and show you some things, as opposed to nope, wants to be brick, or just clapboards.
I mean, I guess it's so open ended, right? But I mean, I used the word modern farmhouse before. Like, I mean, I think that lends a certain aesthetic and materiality to it, right? I mean, you can do modern farmhouses that have lots of masonry, you can do them that have none, but they sort of have this language that I think would go over well, and is within the design review or the design guidelines of the town too. So,
okay,
but it's a little different than saying it should look residential or it should look commercial, right?
Ron, you should show some of the photos of buildings you guys have finished up, like Situate.
Is this the one we had shown? No, it was right. So here's just some mixes that we had shown the
We
board.
didn't actually show Situate.
But
I mean, Situate, I just went on your website. That was siding all the way to the to grade.
Yep. Yeah, we did siding throughout there. Actually, some.
And very similar roof line to what you're showing on option 2. No, 1.
Yep.
So it's opening up now. And so Aaron, what we had shown to the planning board when we went to talk to them about, material use and things like that, we did show them the existing, and we talked about how, the pitched roofs on the existing are kind of an accent to the large flat area. And then we did the same thing, showing them the Medfield. The Medfield roofs have some pitched in a combination. And then this is the Stoughton one, I think that you're referencing, Steve. Or do you want to?
No.
I was
You told about our
referencing
Situate
Situate.
project.
Situate, okay.
Yeah, we don't have that in our slide deck here.
But just the idea that are there opportunities to do some, combination of flat and pitched, and to break down the volumes like you're talking about.
As long as the bylaw, the bylaw for zoning is followed, and if it says it's got to be only pitched roofs all the way around, a bylaw can't be broken.
Right, and that's what the planning board meant. Just Aaron, so that's what the planning board said was, the roofs that are seen from the street need to be pitched 5 to 12. And so, Yeah.
One more item in our special permit.
So, but no, it's a good discussion. It sort of gives us a little bit more to go on. Just in terms of the look. So, okay.
Nice.
I think that's all the items that you guys, that Doran Whittier had and Vert had suggested. Is that,
Okay.
did I miss any, Blythe?
Nope.
So the next item, please discuss communications on social media platforms. Blythe, I don't know if you want
Yeah,
to
I
give a
can-
little
I can lead
background, or
this
Chris,
one.
or
Yeah, so after the presentation to the select board, there was a thread on the Norfolk community page about the project and comments about the cost, which I know Chris and I saw. And Chris reached out to me and said, hey, what do you think about this? You know, I've scripted this answer, which was a very good answer. But what it brought up, and I want to make sure everybody knows, is that the state open meeting law does not lend itself to, as you know, discussions outside of a meeting or any deliberations. And in other communities, they have opined that if there's a thread like that out on something like Facebook, and a majority of the committee weighs in with their comments, even if they're not commenting to each other, still considered to be communication outside of a meeting. So it seemed like an opportune time to bring that up to everybody, just make sure everybody knows that, because it's one of those little factoids you don't necessarily think about every day, and talk about how we are going to handle these things, because they're going to come up more and more as we get out there more in the community. It's probably best if there's a person who handles all of that, or one or two people, but it really shouldn't be any more than that. So it's not something we've got to decide tonight, but I think we need to have it on our mind and have a strategy in the future so that we don't run afoul of the law and get caught up in that and get away from, the true mission, which is helping people understand our, this terrific project. Chris, I don't know if you had any thoughts on it, since you were the guy who saw it and actually answered for everybody.
Yeah, I can start off with the opinion of, if we choose a person, I do not think it should be me. Basically because I gave my one nice answer, and I didn't respond to any response to my nice answer, because it wouldn't probably have been as nice, and which is why I typically stay off of Facebook also. But I do think that we should maybe monitor stuff like that for misinformation, because it kind of frustrates me and probably other people that one person says something that's not necessarily true, and one person that sees it in the town believes it. They tell 5 of their friends in town, and then that just spreads. And, that could be worse for us than any sort of public engagement event that we hold. I almost feel like more people will hear through that than through us holding events, in a way.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll throw my 2 cents in here, having dealt with a number of these situations. I think what we've continually found the best way to handle it is to have our information that we talk about all the time available in a single location, like the town website. And when these discussions come up on Facebook, it's not so much that you're responding to the questions or accusations or even praise. It's simply a for a full understanding or appreciation of what's going on. 1, these are all public meetings, please attend. 2, all of the information that we discuss at all of these meetings is available here. Please review for yourself and, and get yourself up to speed. So
Yeah.
That's, I think that it's in our best interest to have all of the stuff that we have in a single location, organized in a way that's easy to get through and direct people to it to answer their questions.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, I don't know if we want to, as a committee, identify a person or two people to monitor that stuff. Personally, I mean, the first I had heard of that, of what was going on, is when Blythe emailed me, because I mean, I go on Facebook maybe once a year. So it's certainly not anything I monitor, but I like Aaron's idea that maybe the approach is, if someone does see it, there's just a canned answer that says, hey, look, I don't think your information's correct. Please go see this, go see the information we have here. We'd love for you to come to our next meeting, to bring up any opinions, and just period the end, rather than getting into a back and forth on those, because you're never going to win.
Yeah. And one of the most important things I have up there is the schedule, right? This is when we're meeting. This is when we met. This is when we're meeting. We're here. They're open conversations. Come and share your thoughts. We'll have the conversation.
Yep. So on the website right now, just to get everyone up to speed about that, all of our meetings are posted. If we get back to having a regular schedule, we know in advance, we can put that up there. We also have all of our minutes are on the website. We also have our own page, and the feasibility study and the presentation from the 21st are both up there right now, and we'll continue to add to that. Our current website is not great for that sort of thing, but we are in the throes of design of a new one. So we'll be thinking a lot about how to do that in a better way than for the whole town than we have up till now. I do monitor the various websites, at least daily, just because of everything that's going on. So I'm happy to do it. But as you know, I've got a sunset date on that. So someone else will just need to pick it up after that.
Yeah, I think if it's a canned response thing, I'm happy to do that. It's actually probably better than developing draft responses each time. So I'd be happy to do it.
Like,
Yeah.
where is the stuff on the website? Like, where is it? I see links to various locations, but there's not like a.
So if you go under boards and committees, there's a fire station building committee page. And then that lists all of us and our term, and also it's got links to the presentation and the feasibility study.
Matt, is that you that has his hand raised? Just says iPhone.
Yes, sir. Most committees, I don't believe, make comment on Facebook. And is there a value to even getting involved? I mean, everything is on the website. The people that are going to have discussions on the website don't necessarily want to go. So I don't necessarily know if you need to police Facebook, because I don't think it's really done by the other committees around town that I'm aware of. So that was my 2 cents.
The only thing I would say, Matt, is that the particular post that it was on was the Norfolk community page that a lot of people go on that could be totally indifferent to this project. And I think even if they just casually read a post like that and has a link, maybe they click on the link and become a little more familiar with the project. Just, they don't necessarily get into the conversation, but I don't think it can hurt sharing, if we have some sort of, it doesn't have to necessarily be a canned answer, something that is, I don't want to say tailored to the comment, but just something that says, hey, look, we don't necessarily agree with your opinion. I think maybe you have some of the facts wrong. Here's a website you can, where we have more information. We'd love to see at the next meeting. I think personally, I think there might be some value to that, depending on where on Facebook it's being posted, that you might get a casual observer that sees it and clicks on it.
I think I was gonna say my concern, I guess, over that particular page is the casual voter who, like you said, doesn't have any interest in coming to these meetings, doesn't get that involved in anything that's really going on in the town. they still might go out and vote, and they might not have any information in their head about this project, but when they go to the polls, they see the question or they see the vote and they say, oh yeah, I remember that, from back on the community page. No.
Right, but one of the things we talked about when we went through the interviews was, help running or managing this public information process, right? So, I think maybe we need to talk to Doran Whittier and Vertex about what the right thing to do here is, and maybe we need to spend a little bit more time creating a repository than we have to date, right? So, to our website, it's what we have to work with, and I've been working with it for years, and I still have a hard time finding stuff on it. So you definitely need to link to it, and you need to share that link, because you can't just say in a public page, go find it on the website, because no one's going to be able to find it. So I do think there is some value to reminding people where they can find it. But we've had some success on other projects. The B1 zoning, I can is the one that comes to mind, where not only do we use the website, but important documents or reports or surveys, we actually put in the library as well, right? So there's a significant portion of the population that doesn't use Facebook, right? That doesn't use a computer. They're still looking for a newspaper, and they're still looking for information they can find on town meeting boards. So, maybe we need to have a little chalkboard over at the library and with an update on the fire station process. And, maybe we want to be proactive with the Norfolk community page and actually post progress as to what we're doing as a committee and how the project is progressing. Maybe we want to actually post the feasibility study on the Facebook page, right? There's a public relations, campaign here that will have some value.
Just to kind of dovetail off of that, that's exactly where I was going to go with there. And it's, the comment threads are going to come and they're going to happen. But when we talk about trying to get butts in the seat and then people to the polls, you need to do it through any sort of soapbox you have. And whether it's Facebook or the town website or something printed or something in the newspaper, we're going to have to do it all, because you want to get as many people there as you can. So, believe me, I've seen lots of bad comments on public projects on Facebook pages. However, it is, for as many people that don't use it, there's a ton that do. So I appreciate Matt's point that you feel like almost you don't have to engage, but I think if you use it as a place to either post something like that report, it's a great idea, or link them to the town, public building or public safety building committee page, fire station building committee page, where then they can see the progress and every file that gets added. It's just additional info. And it doesn't, I like, Kevin, your point. I don't think you have a completely canned response that just says the same thing every time. If someone does make a comment, I think it's good to acknowledge, hey, Bob, thanks for your comment. Don't really agree, or you might, you might find this helpful. Refer them there, better than just, the bad can, the pan the comment before, or pan the person before it even gets anywhere.
What we've done on some other jobs too is we've had the FAQ link, frequently asked questions as we go along and build something like that. And then also a period of public comment. I don't think we're necessary at that point yet, but where we open up a period and it is all done through the town website, but that can always be advertised through various social media links and so forth, where the town residents can either comment or ask questions, and then we collated all those, and there was a certain number that were the same, and you just sort of pare it down and send out the response to that public comment period. And again, in the effort to bring people in and, you know, that particular one was done when, you know, really COVID was really going on. And, you know, we really couldn't have any in-person public information sessions, but there was a fairly good response to it. And I mean, it doesn't matter that it's COVID, you can still do that and have in-person sessions too. You know, like everybody was saying, you know, the more information you get out there and the more inclusive that we can get for potentially different platforms, then, you know, that it's all that much better. You know, I think that, you know, the Facebook part, not everybody's on Facebook, just like some people said, and, you know, there's not everybody's on a computer necessarily, but if you know, you get some advertising in potentially the whatever the local papers in Norfolk as to where, you know, questions can be asked and submitted. Maybe it can be submitted, you know, in writing to you know, some kind of a Dropbox at town hall. We can gather all that together and try and get something out there.
So, I mean, can we at least get some of this information up on the town website if it's not there already, Blythe, the feasibility study?
The
and maybe
feasibility
the
study and
project
the,
It's
schedule?
there.
yeah, they're there now. The feasibility study and the presentation from the 21st are both there now. If anyone has any ideas for other things that we should put up there next, I can get that up, you know, tomorrow or Monday. And I can, you know, I can share the feasibility study or the presentation or both to the community page. Just, hey, did you see this? We're jumping into design, you know, follow us. Our next meeting is whenever, and put some things out there. Start with that.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe kind of, maybe you send an email out to the committee, Blythe, just kind of what we just said, hey, you know, for more information, see this website, you know, with the link there. And then if anyone sees something on Facebook, maybe for the next few weeks, we can try it this way, that if somebody sees that, they can kind of put this semi-canned response on there, and everyone on the committee just needs to be aware that, you know, if someone's already written that, there's really no reason to post more after
Right.
that.
I mean, I would say if we want to limit to say Chris and I for now, if you see
Sure.
something, let one of us know and we can chase it. I mean, I say I look at least once a day at the community page and the town's page. If there's others I should be monitoring, I'm not aware.
And Blythe, you have it, it's on the What's New main page also that I see. So
Yeah.
it's in a couple places.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if we can have a link though, just that brings them right to that spot, to Aaron's point, people aren't going to search around really. So, Chris, are you okay doing it that way?
Yep. Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks. Any more discussion on that topic from anyone?
Mm-mm.
I think I would like to add that, you know, is there somebody within your group or even in the community who's in favor of the project, who enjoys doing this type of thing? So what we have found in the past is sometimes you reach out to somebody in the community who, you know, they have a knack for it, right? So they will go in, they will check the questions that come up. You do create a frequently asked questions and you respond to it once a week, right? So every Friday you go in and say, you know, we saw these several questions or comments on the site, and we've provided some responses. It's a little bit of effort, and our involvement in that is most times we would get an email from the client that says, hey, you know, somebody's asked these 10 questions. We're going to answer 1 and 2, but can you give us a summary response to questions 3 through 10, you know? Because sometimes some of the questions that come up have nothing to do with the design or the schedule of the, you know, the cost. It has to do with like politically, like your question, you know, Blythe, it'd be a question more like, hey, what does this mean for the school project? You know, And we wouldn't be any good at answering something like that. But on the flip side, there'd be a question that comes in that says, you know, why does the building look like this? And, you know, and then we could sort of draft an answer for you to take a look at, you know. But if there is that level of someone checking once a week and then a process of, you know, someone from the committee coming out on those websites. And I think, Aaron, to your point, every one of those things has a link down the bottom that they can just click on and get to the most recent updated information on that website.
Yeah, we've often talked about this, like the Friends of the Fire Station, right? Is there a
Yeah,
committee
exactly.
in town, right? Is there like a small business association or something that, you know, is there some related group? It could be one or two or however many people are interested, right? Yeah.
And I would just echo that you don't want to get into a back and forth with anybody on any of these sites, because Chris, I think you said it, you're never going to win, right? They're just going to bait you into saying things. So, which is exactly the reason I'm not on social media.
That's why I stopped after one response. I wasn't going to keep going.
I mean, it's, you know, that idea, Ron and Aaron, about getting, you know, some people in town that are pro the project that might be willing to kind of organize something like that. I mean, it could be something we bring up at the next community event, see if there's anybody that's willing to do it.
Or if, Chief, if you know of, yeah, and I don't know if there's any people that express interest in helping out, you know, what can we do to help the firefighters, or I don't know.
We would have to make sure that whatever responses go out get vetted a little bit, just to make sure that it's accurate or, you know,
Yes.
somewhat benign.
Yeah, that would be my only concern. I think we do have, you know, there's a couple of families, or in the case of, you know, there's a few people that, you know, we had field saves on who, you know, coded or who were no longer with us, but we got them back, who are, you know, very much in favor of us. But the problem with that is, you know, they can be very opinionated too, and could end up going back and forth or engaging and not end up hurting more than they help, you know, if you will, if it's misinformation or they get involved in the back and forth. You know, I like the idea of kind of, you know, steering people to the documents and having one or two go-to people, excuse me, and not really engaging, because there's always going to be those naysayers, those people that, you know, are going to spread misinformation. But if we put access, give them access to the accurate information, then, you know, they have to, you know, if we're providing people with access to the accurate information and sending them there, then, you know, that eliminates those arguments. I know we went through that here in Medfield with the new school project, and it has been a disaster, like to the point where we went to the polls, people were getting their cars keyed because they were supporting or not supporting. Like, it was ugly, nasty. And the biggest problem with that is that there was two factions of information and neither one was fully accurate. It was like the real good information wasn't present. Like, there were meetings and things, but they weren't posting the accurate information or just the simple plain data out there, you know, for people to be able to look at it.
Okay. Was there, Blythe, there was a question about the schematic design. I think, John, we've been trading some emails that had to do with the level of effort.
Yeah, I think go ahead. I think the last item was to discuss both the proposals for Vertex and Dorn Whittier.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
So the Vertex proposal was attached to the meeting packet that went out, I think, last week.
Mhm.
The Dorn Whittier proposal, I think, didn't come out until maybe noontime or so today.
Correct.
Has everyone or anyone had an opportunity to read one or both? Anyone on the committee? Yay or nay? Who's read the Vertex? Who's gone through the Vertex proposal?
I know it's exciting reading.
I'd say I skimmed them at best, both of them.
Okay, both. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess we can go in order that we received them. I do have some questions for Vertex.
Sure.
So I'll ask mine, and then obviously, if anybody has additional questions, you can certainly chime in. And just so I understand, so I know you both gave prices through, or I think Dorn Whittier gave prices through construction, closeout even, but Vertex is only through
Bidding.
And regardless, at this point, we're only approving schematic design, although we wanted to kind of get the bigger picture through bidding, right, Blythe?
So the thought was that we would be presenting to the select board on the 18th, 2 weeks from last night, both contract amendments, at least through bidding. But because the charge to our committee is to get an approval, to keep moving forward at each step, that although we're approving the contract, it would require a notice to proceed to the OPM and the architect after schematic, after design development. And even though they had a contract, they would not be able to do work or bill for it until they receive that notice to proceed. And we would structure it that way.
Right. So I think that the hope is tonight we can kind of go through these or go through anybody's questions to at least get, and if everyone's comfortable with the proposals as presented, great. If not, at least say, hey, if we can get the number down to roughly, this range, and Blythe and myself and maybe one other person can be involved in that process, that then we can have it approved, but we would only be approving, we would know that, okay, we're good through bidding for all these numbers, but we are going to have to go to the select board for each phase. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess for Vertex's proposal, there's some discussion in here on the pre-qualification process. So at a high level, can you just tell us kind of what is involved in the pre-qualification process and what your involvement is?
Sure thing. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So pre-qualification is something that's required of any public project that's over $10 million. And what that requires is that we issue a request for qualifications for the GCs that are going to bid this job, as well as any of the filed sub-trade categories that are going to bid the job. So filed sub-trades, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, painting, miscellaneous metals, there's flooring, there's roofing. It's this very specific list that's listed in Chapter 149. Basically, what we do is put together a quals package that is very, it's very specific. It follows a prescribed format. Basically, it breaks down the quals into basically the project team and their experience, their capacity to complete the project, references, financial stability, kind of all of those things. They send back all of this info. We have a rubric that we will have put together to help score it. And the state is very specific. There's 50 points in one section, 30 in another, 20 in another. We're allowed to move those points around within the section. Obviously, as in project experience, similar project experience, we would want to weight a little bit a firm that's done fire stations a little bit higher than a firm that's done all public work, but that's never done a fire station, and that's a way to basically score somebody and see where they fall through. Also, we will attempt to get at least three project references and 3 credit references for each and every GC, and at least 3 references returned from every single sub. So basically, the last time we did a pre-qual, it was about 100 firms that will go out, and you want that number as high as it can be, because the more people that respond and that get pre-qualified, that's your bidding pool. If only 3 GCs apply to pre-qual on this job and we pre-qualify the 3 of them, those are the only 3 firms that are allowed to submit a bid. And that's Mass General Law that's dictating that. So we try to
These
cast
get
a lot.
advertised in the central register
Yeah.
also. It's
They get
just like a bid.
Just like a bid, except it's a
Preface
qual
it.
package that comes back. And then we will need, help from Doran Whittier and a couple of people from the town on this committee to go through and review those as part of a pre-qualification subcommittee. We do most of the lifting though. We automate all of the reference checks, get those to come out, go out, come back. So all you're dealing with is data. And then if everybody can, the other people in the committee will also review the packages to a degree, but we make sure we chase all the references and whatnot. We try to make it as easy for you as we can. Dawn and Ron are designing, and everyone else here has got a different, full-time job they're working on. And then we'll meet with you periodically to say, okay, here's how we're doing. Additionally, if there's, right after, as we start seeing responses come in, if we don't hit the minimum number, we do have to re-advertise and do it again. But prior to getting to that, if we see that the people who are pulling the package are below, a certain number, hey, we've only got 2 painters. Well, between us and Doran Whittier, we have information on other painters. We'll go and call them and say, hey, have you seen this work? So that we can go and get pricing. Obviously, in this marketplace, we want as many HVAC guys as we can, because some of that pricing is through the roof. So the more people that you have bidding, the more Norfolk can be ensured that we're getting competitive numbers. All that stuff comes back. We chew through it all. We report that, we meet with the subcommittee, we come up with a list of, hey, these are the folks that we're going to pre-qualify. That list then gets memorialized and gets posted in the specifications that get put on the street for bidding as this is the list of pre-qualified subs and GCs who can bid the job. If you're not on that list, you cannot bid. So I just spoke for a good 3 minutes there. Did I answer your question?
You did.
All right, good.
Thank you. So just because I read very briefly on it, but basically you're going to lead the process, but there is I'll call it a subcommittee formed, but that subcommittee is one member of the OPM team,
OPM designer, and two from the town,
and two committee members, basically.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. The drawing reviews, I know you had drawing reviews listed for all phases, and
Yep.
you were very clear to note that they're not peer reviews.
Yep.
I guess what is the drawing review consisting of then?
So it's really more of a coordination review, Kevin. So I'm never going to look at a structural drawing and say, no, this shouldn't be a W 8x16 beam. It should be a different size. We don't do calculations. What
Sure.
we're checking more to make sure of is that, hey, do the structurals and the architecturals, do they sync? Do the electricals and the, if there's an air handling unit on the roof, is there a circuit for it in the panel board? Trying to make sure that all of the different trades that are working for Doran Whittier's team, that they've all talked to each other, so that we don't end up with a bad reference or a bad connection. Or when I say reference, I mean, refer to this detail and it's not there. We're looking at it kind of with the contractor hat on to say, if I could find a problem with these, where is it? So we do that a couple of ways. One, through the multidiscipline review in-house with our folks. And then you also get a measure of that with the comparative estimate that's done, so that the estimators are seeing things the same way, so that if we're expecting something to be in one order of magnitude and it comes in at twice that order of magnitude, okay, is there something in the drawings they're not seeing or not seeing correctly, or interpreting a certain way? And that gives us and Doran Whittier pause to say, okay, maybe we have to look at this. Why is this being reacted to this way by someone who's never seen these drawings before? So kind of cost on one side, and then constructability and coordination on the other side.
And when we do our constructability review, Kevin, we're not just looking at the drawings. We go through the project manual also. We go through the technical specs, make sure that, especially on the file subbid trades, to make sure that everything is captured within their section. In particular, the electrical and the HVAC, who always seem to, they can be very savvy at saying, I don't own this, even though it's on the drawings. But also, Division 1 and the front end, just making sure things like, overhead and profit on change orders is listed and is reasonable, and, site specific items, in general conditions, temporary facilities, so on and so forth, is all coordinated. There's a lot of standard language out there, but you want to tailor it to the specific job of ours. So it's the whole package. It's not just looking between the drawings for potential scope holes and change orders, which equal money and time later on once the contractor's on board.
Also, Kevin, the last piece to that is through those reviews, starting to understand where any owner supplied systems are coming into things, systems that may be procured outside of the GC, whether that be, furniture, whether that be some sort of station alerting system or communications. Again, we haven't had the discussions yet, but if you remember the questions we had to the designers in the interviews about ownership of those and making sure those are all in the drawings and complete, we'll make sure we're shaking that out too. And you'll also notice that the level of effort at DD is one level, but it almost doubles for CD. And the reason why is it's not worth doing a completely exhaustive review at DD, because half of your comments will be because we're not done yet. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure that we understand where they're going with something, but also acknowledge that DD isn't complete. CD is more complete. So have the discussion, have the back and forth with Drew and Whittier. We understand where they are with things. Some of the answers might just be it's because we're not done. But then when we get to CDs, that's when we're looking for, even more scrutiny and see, okay, did they follow through with what they said they were going to do when we had the DD discussion? And if not, why? And, check out if anything new has cropped up as well.
Okay. We touched on my next question, the third party estimates. So there'd be a parallel estimate done at design development and construction documents. The cost for that is not in your proposal. Can we get?
I will get those for you. So in full disclosure, the estimator we had carried is who Dora and Whittier carried, and we, rather than telling them to go find someone else, we said we would go find someone else. We've had some conversations, but we still have to nail that down. But we will give you those prices when they come out, and we'll show you the paper. It's very straightforward.
I mean, ballpark. Do you feel comfortable?
Oh, geez.
Do a number, but like a ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, Don, can you tell me what he's charging you for? Because I know AM Fogarty's will be the same. We don't have pricing yet. That's why, Kevin.
No, it's probably anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000, depending on who you talk to.
Okay.
So if you figured 10 and 10, Kevin, and if it's more than that, I'll let you know.
I didn't actually print out your proposal, but my last question was, in each phase you had there was a general comment, technical assistance to the owner.
Yep.
What is that in general? Like
you have a question.
Kind of a catch-all, but
yeah, kind of a catch-all. You have a question. What are Don and Ron's? What do they mean when they're saying this? A good question. If you have any questions, that's just kind of we're here as a resource.
Okay.
Would that also include assistance when we get to it for procurement of the temporary quarters? Because I thought when you and I chatted, you were going to add that in, but I didn't see it in the final version, John.
Oh, you know what, Blythe, you're right. But yes, Yes, I mean, we will help you with that process, of course.
I've done a lot of talking. Does anyone else on the committee have questions about Vertex?
I'll jump in with a few comments. One, I thought the proposal was pretty comprehensive, which is appreciated. I think the fee is pretty reasonable. I think it's interesting and worth noting that we've managed to be efficient with the feasibility process, and they came in estimated 10,000 under what they had estimated for their fee, this being Vertex. So I think that's all good news. I also think, as we've talked about schedule in this meeting earlier, we are staying pretty efficient and on schedule with the process, which again is good news. I think my last comment is, and this ties a little bit into the Doran Whittier proposal, but Doran Whittier had some what they call added services in there. I guess to the Vertex team, are there any services that you typically see as add service? Like, are there some things that we should be considering?
No, Aaron, it's a great question. The only thing is external estimates. And when we move to construction, if we do commissioning and you want us to run that through us, we run that through us as an expense, just like Doran Whittier would. So really, we, as opposed to the designer, we have very little that has to go out of house, and it's really just the cost estimator most of the time.
Yeah, the commissioning and the materials testing.
Oh yeah, materials testing. Yeah,
we'll run it through us, and just put a percentage on it. But we coordinate with getting them to the site anyways, and then we review their invoices, which we would do also. I mean, it can't go direct to the town for billing. That we've done it that way, but generally we offer to go through us, and we have line item cost for that in the budget anyways.
Matt,
Thanks.
You have a question? Sorry, Aaron, were you done?
I'm all set. Thanks.
Yeah. Matt, I saw you raising your hand.
So I spent a significant amount of time going over the Vertex proposal, and I was running some numbers. And one thing that was nice to see with the Doran Whittier is the overall projects, kind of the overall scope of the project. So it appears to me there's going to be a lot of site. I was hoping to find out what you feel the overall total owner's project management will cost for this project. You've put some placeholders down for like 70 hours or 40 hours a week or 70 weeks for 40 hours. Do you guys have an overall scheme?
Yeah, I have that map, but I don't have it here because, we took the approach of until we know whether it's 15 or 16 or 17 months, like when's the start, until we come up with that decision, we just hold off a little bit. And because we were going through bidding, I can come up with a number for you guys pretty easily, but it's, bottom line, it's 40 hours a week in the field and about 12 hours a week for Steve to do the PM stuff, and an hour here or there for me. And once it gets to construction, it's in capable hands of two other people. So I stay away from billing on the project. I can get you guys a number, but the construction number for us is the biggest number. If it's roughly 40 grand a month, 16 months, it's another $640,000. That's
I'll jump in with Matt's comment there. I think it would be good to get a number just as an estimating thing. And I kind of like the fact that the proposal only goes through bidding. And when we get to talking about Doran Whittier's, I might suggest that we, only approve them through bidding, and the construction admin and closeout becomes a proposal that we deal with at a later time. But it'd be good to have equivalent numbers from Vertex for those phases, just so we get an idea of what the overall soft cost would be.
I can easily update both of these and have them to Blythe by first thing in the morning.
Yeah, it's just a math calculation, really.
Yeah, I think that would be good, because I know, when we were starting this process, I have a little more involvement just in my other life, that I have a decent idea of where, AE fees come in, but OPM fees is a little more black box to me, though. I did some investigation a little bit, asking around, so it'd be good to know, that the ballpark numbers I was given was basically an all-in percentage of construction cost. So I think it'd be good to have it just to know that we're in that range.
Sure, you get,
To Aaron's point, for Doran Whittier and you, I mean, we're not holding anybody to the construction phase numbers. I think they're your best estimates at this point, just
Yeah.
to know where we're at.
no, that's totally fair. We'll do it, and we'll do it for the same 16 months for now.
Yeah.
And one thing you got to be careful of is, one thing that drives the clerk, on the on-site construction site manager or clerk, is the duration of the project.
Right.
And sometimes that percentage that's out there, and we've seen it before when we come in after, an early study is done and a percentage is put in for OPM, but the project is 2 years. That percentage doesn't necessarily work. So that's why we say, it does become a math calculation. We've got our rates. We know that a clerk is going to be on site 40 hours a week for X amount of weeks.
Yeah. No, I get it, Steve. I mean, I certainly wouldn't treat a percent of construction costs as the end all be all, but I think it gives you an idea if you're in the ballpark.
Yep.
So.
John, perhaps what you can do is take the spreadsheet that you sent me this afternoon, and I forwarded to the committee for the comparison communities that you had, and update that through a full project. So you compared Falmouth, Medford, Upton, and the Norfolk Fire Station.
The only thing, Blythe, though, is those durations will all be different. So when I add construction, it's going to skew. It won't quite be apples out. And I will tell you that I don't know if we have, Medford is just early in design. Medford has just started, so I can't even tell you what that will be.
All right, well,
And,
then pick ones that are gonna help the committee, see the bigger picture.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what we're charging by the month on a couple of other projects, ballpark, and I can show you that way.
Yeah. Okay. Matt, did you have another question, or is your hand just still up from before?
It's still up from before. Let me try to drop it. Blythe, if you could share
Tom's
the-
getting tired.
I'd like to see the comparisons. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on the Vertex proposal before we? I figured we'd kind of go through both proposals before we talk about possibly accepting or negotiating. Any other questions?
Let's just summarize the Vertex one real quick before I forget here.
Sure.
So we're talking about material testing, coordinating, and third-party estimating being additional services. Vertex is going to add language noting they're carrying procurement of the temp housing, and they're going to add estimate numbers for construction phase and closeout fees.
Matt, I did send that. You were copied on the same email this afternoon with the comparison data.
So your third-party testing comment again, Aaron?
Yeah, I think Vertex was saying any coordination of and procurement of third-party testing was an ad service. Third-party material testing.
No, coordination of, no, it's not extra. If you actually want us to run the cost of the testing through, like
Okay.
the bill from PSI, we can run it through for you, but we're going to put a markup on it, just like Doran Whittier would, or you can cut the PO yourself and deal with all the invoices that come in. And that's either way, we're going to review them and say, yeah, it's good or not good. It's just a question of, and we don't have to decide that for months.
Right.
Well, that question's going to go to Matt eventually, right? So
And
Matt
we'll shop
Matt
that
maybe put
out.
some thought into it.
We'll shop those numbers out for, when it comes time, and if we're only going to do HVAC, or if we decide to do building envelope commissioning also.
Yeah. So I think right now the proposal, we just want to get an estimate of what the third-party estimating is going to be for DD and CD, and then what your estimated cost during construction are.
Yep.
And closeout also,
Close out.
if
Yep.
there's any time on that, because then it's apples to apples to Doran
There
Whittier.
is, yeah.
So it would be helpful, I think, if, clearly we want to see all that, but in order to keep moving forward to select board meeting on the 18th, it would be helpful to understand if everyone's sense of these numbers are, you're comfortable with them, or you're not, so that Kevin and I can work on making sure we wrap this up for the next meeting.
I have I have no concept of what these are supposed to be, but if everyone says it's reasonable, then I would agree with that. My concern is do these numbers still jive with the idea that we have enough money on hand to get all the way through the procurement of the temporary housing plus the through the bid phase? As long as we're consistent with that, then I'm going to be okay with it.
So we spent about 150,000, and these are very round numbers, in the feasibility phase between Doran Whittier, Vertex, some legal work, some advertising. And then these through bidding, so you can see Vertex is about 120,000 more. Is that, I don't have them.
Yeah, about 125,000 more. Yep.
125 more, and the architect would be about $1 million more. So in very round numbers, we started with 3.3. And if you could add those numbers I just mentioned, you're less than 2. So I'd say the short answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
I can do better math, not in my head, tomorrow and send it to you.
You've got around two. You've got still have around 2 million.
Yep.
Which is great.
Minus 500,000 for the trailers. So
Right.
Right. 2 million to do what you need to,
Yeah, as far as Vertex's proposal and numbers, I thought they looked fine. Knowing that, as long as the third party estimating doesn't come in substantially higher than the numbers you threw out tonight. And I mean, the construction numbers are just really for our own benefit for comparison. It's not anything we're approving anyway.
Yeah, just to be clear, Clive and Kevin, so I filled out an amendment that basically was feasibility through bidding. I'm not going to add construction and closeout to that amendment. I'm going to leave it to the side. That's just for budgeting purposes. We're going to move ahead with putting that on the amendment so that you can give us a notice to proceed to move ahead with SD. And then each of those things we'll already have an amendment for, but we'll get a letter each time that we get allowed to go into kind of that next phase.
Correct.
Right. I mean, the numbers we're going to need to be real sooner are the third party estimating numbers.
Yeah, I should be able to have a number for you guys tomorrow for those.
Okay. Did anyone feel that the Vertex proposal was unreasonable? Maybe we'll ask it that way.
I hope no one says yes. It's going to be an awkward moment.
there's my puke emoji button.
So this is Mac weighing in again. I did think it was very heavy for the schematic design development at this point in the project, because the designer owns everything and it's all their responsibility. And at the end of the day, yes, it's great to have them overlook, but it seems like there's a lot of hours build that I'm not quite sure are justifiable if it's in the designer's hands. And I understand doing a review before we put out the construction documents and keeping an eye on things, but it seemed like a lot of money up front to me before we go to construction. I see the value, towards the end of the construction documents and also going to the meetings and making sure everything seems good. But it seems like there's a lot of reviews, and like you said earlier, that you're going to do a less of a study on the first phase. Is there a value to even doing a study of the first phase if everything's still changing? So just from the scope of what this was and what this has become, and I understand that times have changed, but it's going to be about $1 million, I think, all in for the OPM. And I'd rather speak, if money is a factor, I like to have them there for the construction phase more than the head of design phase, because that's truly in the designer's ball, the court.
The problem, Matt, though, is that you don't have the ability to pick and choose. The Mass General Law says we have to be on the project. And, you know, here's, I don't know if you can you see what I'm threw up on the screen there?
No, I'm not, but I fully understand that, but it doesn't tell the town, it doesn't dictate to whoever's hiring what the level of effort. It's saying that there has to be service. It doesn't say that you have to do this, do that, do this.
Well, listen, Matt, all I can tell you is will be our 30-something public safety building. And these numbers are put together using the history and our experience of what we do on all of our other projects. You know, and that's, you know, hopefully as you get a chance to get to know us a little bit more, you'll see the value. I mean, if there's a number that you're trying to get to, fine. But as you know, the comparative numbers, you know, on other projects, we're 130 grand in Falmouth, 132 in Upton for the job we just did, and Medford Fire, which is a complicated city block project that's about the same, only a couple million more. That fee is almost double. So we really try to look at the level of effort based on what we're doing, you know, the client we're working with, the committee we're working with. I mean, and as a percent of construction, this is our lowest fee we've put out there of the last, you know, of the four we're showing you here.
Again, John, my more concern is the beginning where this schematic design and the design development. I mean, I just think there's a lot of effort or a lot of funds being spent at a phase where it's completely all in the designer's like court. So I see a lot of value further down the line. I don't see the value as much towards the beginning of this process. I can see it once we have construction documents getting ready.
But Matt, by the time there's construction documents, if the train's going off the tracks a little bit, that's too late. It's too late.
Yeah.
Any input, the later we're allowed to be in and participate and give input, you know, the less value you get for having us. So you're getting double hurt. So if you don't want to spend 60 grand for us in the next phase, well, if it's something we could have talked about and helped catch, you know, it's just we're another leg in the stool. We're trying to help that out. And listen, and as you saw from the feasibility phase, we didn't spend all the money. And we typically, and Blythe can speak to this when we worked for her in Upton, you know, if we have money left over, it goes into the next bucket. Anything that's left goes into construction.
We're not a lump sum fee, Matt.
We can do it for less, we can do it for less. And if at any point you don't think we're providing value, or I'm not, or Steve's not, say something. We're happy to talk about it. But
not of providing value, I'm saying providing value in the beginning phases when it's just schematic design.
Yeah, but let's talk those numbers out, right? I mean, the schematic design fee is $26,000, right? I mean, Vertex came in 20% under estimate on feasibility, right? Feasibility was 45,000, right? They came in at roughly 35,000, right? So
do we have the last invoice for December?
No, you don't.
So,
you don't yet.
So looking at it a different way, kind of what Aaron's thread, that's $2,600 a week. And looking at the level of effort, it's got Steve Kirby here. Over 10 weeks, it's 11.6 hours a week, which to me is going to be well spent in the working group meetings. And we're working on the budget and coordination that I think just helps keep us on track. So I can appreciate wanting to be very careful with every dime. That's how I roll. But I think I have to say that this is going to be money well spent.
Yeah, and I think that there is, I know we're early in the game and Doran Whittier has a lot of work to do, but to John and Steve's point, I think having their eyes on it now just makes the process more efficient as we move along. You know, if we left you guys out of the loop or reduced your time now, I mean, you're reducing what is basically your smaller fees, and I feel like you're going to spend more time in construction documents getting back up to speed. So personally, I think that I think these are all fair points, Matt, but I in my opinion, and what I've looked through, and if feedback I've gotten from other architects and things that I've worked with, these numbers seem pretty reasonable.
December invoice is about 6,400.
No, that was my concern. It's just the beginning part, and I understand everybody has valid points. It just seemed a lot for the very beginning of it. And I'm all about the construction oversight, and I'm all about the final document. It's just if it's a living document in the beginning, is there a value to having stuff reviewed if it's living and it's being moved around? And so that was my concern. Is just want to watch every penny. I've kind of lived this, and I just want to make sure that, there won't be any, why did we have that cost after? It just seemed like to me, it seems like it's heavy in the front, that's all. But I'm not in the committee. That was my 2 cents.
Thank you, Matt. Any other comments on Vertex's proposal? So if everyone's comfortable with that, I mean, do we need to vote on it, Blythe, or we just need to know everybody's good with it? So you're muted, Blythe.
I think that everybody's good with it. I did the scripted vote, but if you're more comfortable doing that, I think it's totally fine.
If it's not necessary, then no.
Not necessary. I want to be able to say to the select board that the committee recommends this proposal.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think we can vote on it because it's not final, because there's a couple of things that have to be added to it. But
Sure.
to Blythe's point, if we can say it looks in line with our expectations, and we imagine that the numbers when they come in and are finalized will be approvable, she can go on and do what she needs to do with the select board. So I would make a motion to that effect, just for discussion here officially with Blythe, and the items that we're talking about are material testing and third-party estimating being at cost services, and Vertex will be adding mention of the procurement of the temp housing as part of services included, and we'll be adding estimate costs for construction phase and closeout fees.
You want me to say all that?
The only thing I would add to that, Aaron, is that we're going to add in language that we're going to coordinate those things. If at a later point you decide for us to run those costs through, there'll be a cost plus a markup. I have to put an expense markup on if we run it through. But if we, but the coordination of all of that is, absolutely in these figures.
And we, so we run the option if need be, we can have Matt and his team do the material testing, right? Save some.
Yeah, it really becomes a function of procurement sometimes. Where if we will go and get all the prices for you, and at the end of the day, sometimes the towns want to cut the POs themselves. Sometimes they're like, nope, put it on your invoice. It's one less invoice to process. If that puts the processing of the invoice on us, it's one less person to pay. We don't care, whatever way you want to do it. But either way, we're going to go get you the prices. Either way, we're going to review the invoice from the materials testing company when it comes in to make sure it's in line with what we agreed to. It's just a question of how do you want it paid for? Do you want us to do it, or do you want to do it?
And we're going to coordinate the site visits on the field because we're there every day dealing with the contractor.
Right.
So I made the motion because I assumed we were voting, because I thought we wanted to give Blythe and Kevin the final ability to approve it, which I didn't put in my motion, but I just did. So now I'm done.
Okay. Then I'll ask for a motion to give approval to Blythe and I to take this contract to the select board for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Roll call vote, actually.
I have to do a roll call vote. Blythe
Because we're in a
Robinson.
Zoom meeting.
Yeah, Blythe Robinson,
Yes.
Justin Yosik,
Yes.
Aaron Hunt,
Aye.
Chris Baker,
Yes.
John Kent,
Yes.
Chief Kinney,
Yes.
Kevin Champagne, yes.
Thank you.
Doran Whittier proposal. So I just had a couple comments on this one as well. Let me kind of get my notes here. The one comment I had on the town, so you gave the timelines, which was very helpful for each phase. the town votes for 8 weeks, says assist town preparing for town meeting and ballot votes January to February. Just curious, could some of that occur during the bidding process, so we're not waiting until January? You know, we could have the town vote in January, or does that affect your allocation of fees at all?
No, not at all. In fact, we have that gap in there because we don't know when the votes are actually going to occur.
Yeah.
So we know that we're going to be assisting you throughout the entire process as we've been talking about. So helping you prep for your town meeting and debt exclusion votes, it'll just be kind of ingrained in our process, mostly between Ron and myself and Jason.
And then most of my other questions centered around the additional services budget. Let me make sure I don't have another one before then. Sorry, I was scribbling these down as I read it today. The $10,000 for enhanced landscaping design, when do you think we'll know that, if that cost is needed?
Hopefully by the end of SD.
Okay.
And quite frankly, you know, I did send that email while you were discussing Vertex's contract to Rich McCarthy. So we're going to meet with them next week. And, you know, if we can find out exactly what needs to take place in terms of that green belt that has to run around the site, what we have to do versus what we might not have to do. It may, like I said, and I think I put in an email to John that it might actually be nothing. You know what I mean? But it might be a lot if they do require us to knock down a bunch of trees and put in a bunch of trees and then put all the bushes and everything else. So.
But that would be all after schematic design anyway.
Yeah. Yep. And that's what we want to do, is scope that out in schematic design.
Okay. And actually that work would occur, you know, into DD into CDs with a landscape architect.
Yep.
The bid and permit phase services, I was curious what that extra was when there was already a line item for bidding of $88,135. What the additional $25,000 is, and then along those same lines, the septic system design, I guess, help me understand why that's an additional service and not part of the civil design.
Yep. So the permitting is basically everything it takes to put together the documents and then attend the meetings with the planning board primarily. So that's what that is. And that's with our civil engineer, it's hours based, right? It's level of effort. You can have one meeting, you can have 12 meetings. I know that's an exaggeration probably on both ends, but take their best estimate and we build a budget based upon that. And it's fair to say that in all the cases, these are budgets. So if it's determined that we need to do something with the enhanced landscape design with the buffer, we'll get a proposal from our landscape architect and submit it to you guys for approval. It would the supplemental services proposal. True with the permitting too. That'll be based upon the actual level of effort that's required to get through the permitting process. And with the septic system, we're not sure what we're going to need to do there. Are we going to have to enhance the existing system, or are we going to have to do a new system, or are we going to have to do nothing? We feel that system's designed to of a size right now that's plenty big enough for this building. So that may not be required at all.
And that'll also be reconciled pretty soon, Kevin. As soon as we get the actual water usage information for last year or the year before, we can go to the DEP and just basically say, in the local board of health, and say we don't have to touch that existing system. If we know that if we do it according to Title V regulations, then the system has to get bigger. But the Title V regulations, I think our civil engineer put it best when he said, you know, they're extremely conservative, especially for a building like this. And so he recommended, and which is probably the reason you did it like this when it was built several years ago. You use the actual water usage rates. And you do a comparison to other fire stations, and it downsizes it. Now, having said that, we also learned from Rich McCarthy that the town has recently sort of lessened the requirement. We used to have a requirement in there to upsize the septic system if you had garbage disposals in your sinks. And now that has been lessened, if you will. So anyway, we don't think you're going to need to upsize that system, but we can't be sure of that. So we told the civil engineer not to include it. And so he took it out of his fee. And so we're putting it sort of as an additional just in case we need it. And we will know that by the end of schematic design for sure. In fact, I think Matt may have sent me an email that I missed. So if he already sent me the water usage reports, you're going to get that answer even quicker.
Can I ask a follow-up question on the bidding permit services, Kevin?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm still a little foggy on this one. Are you saying basically that any kind of special permits or extra permits require extra level of effort, that no permits are included in your base bid? Is that what you mean?
It's actually going, it's not encompassed, back up. The work to do what a special permit may require is part of the basic services. This is the work that's required to actually go through the permitting process, because it's really all time-based for these guys. And
Building permit or bidding?
no,
I mean,
not building permit. No, this is primarily planning board, right?
Yeah,
that's a
maybe we just
particular part of your
ignore the word
project?
bid. You know, if we just ignore the word bid, this is the permitting process. For instance, typical planning board, you probably go 2 to 3 times, right? You have an initial submission, there's an initial comment period. You then respond to the comments, which is their second review, and then they'll take it all into consideration. They'll probably table it and then approve it at a third meeting. We've had some meetings where we go 12 meetings in, you know, and how do you budget for something like that? And it's the time to consistently respond to them and actually attend the meetings. So you prepare the presentation, you have to, you know, go out there and actually meet with them. You know,
So what do we own as part of our base services? We don't own any, or we own 2 to 3?
nope, you own the permitting that has to do with the DEP. And then I think we put in there that we were going to conduct 3 meetings with the planning board.
All right, so this is above and beyond 3 meetings with the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Okay, I wasn't connecting the dots on that.
yeah, I think I don't know if it specifically gives a number of meetings that's in the base bid, or even how many meetings. I know the 25,000 is guess, but it might be good to
Right.
have a number that says, hey, if we got to attend 10 meetings, it's 25 grand. That way we know if we attend 15, it's going to be more than 25 grand.
Well, that's why we gave you the 25, because we know if we go to the 3 meetings, we're not going to spend the whole 25, right? And you're going to keep some money. So that's the reason why we're saying all the permitting is hourly, not to exceed that 25,000. So if you were to say to us, you know, what's in the project, we would say we're expecting to do 3 meetings with the planning board. We're expecting to do the DEP permitting and the UIC permitting. But, you know, that's why we're giving you the range of $25,000. Because if we start and we're going to be able to tell you, okay, we've gone to 3 meetings, it's cost this much money, you minus that from the 25,000, and this is how much you have left. Maybe the town wants to talk to the planning board and say, why are you requiring them to consistently come back to the planning board? You know,
I'm hearing
because
different things now, though. I thought we had the first 3 meetings included in our base services, and the 25,000 was beyond that.
no,
Are
I'm
we
sorry.
saying-
What I'm trying to say is that 25,000 was based on a certain number of meetings, and then we added a cushion. So that, you know, if things start to go awry, we can just be billing against that hourly.
I guess my frustration is that in throughout your various stages, you say, meet regularly with building committee, fire chief, department representatives, working group, town boards, committees, and so on. I would think that covers going to meetings, and now it seems like depending on the meeting, it might be separate. And
Not charging you for Doran Whittier's time at all. That's all
Yeah.
included.
And-
It's
and I
just a
think-
civil engineer.
Yeah, and it's not just meetings with the planning board, it's responding to, and I don't know how they do it with an independent engineer, if there's someone in-house that reviews documentation, provides comments. The engineer responds to those comments, they have conversations about those comments with the engineer, then they go back to the meeting. So there's quite a bit of time involved with getting through the permitting process as it relates to a planning board. So that's the idea.
But I
here-
think we understand that. I think
Okay.
what we're not understanding is what do we own and what don't we own? So we're saying,
Um,
this is related to getting through Norfolk town approvals to build. It's not a building permit. It's not that.
Correct.
This is getting approvals for the project, right?
Correct.
And it's not architectural. Doran Whittier's covered.
Yep.
This is civil. So,
Yes.
so that means the civil might not be at the first 3 meetings, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
if it takes 6 meetings, we might be okay because civil only went to 3.
Mhm.
So what do we get? What do we own from civil before we have to start getting into this $25,000?
So what we've asked civil to do is perform hourly. Right?
So we don't own
can-
anything from civil.
Correct, because we want them to work hourly. Because let me give you an example. If we wanted them to come to next week's meeting, and that's an if, because I don't really think they need to be there, and it was conducted by Zoom, right? There'd be a lot less time involved. They would get on the call when they need to get on the call. They'd answer the questions from a technical and engineering perspective.
Alright.
But we would be there.
I got it.
And so, but if we required them to come down in person and, like we've had engineers who have to attend a workshop and it ends up being a 3.5, 4-hour workshop with a planning and zoning board because we're trying to get special permits through.
Right. So this is, I guess, well, for semantics here, we'll say this is civil support for permitting phase services.
Yes.
Mhm.
Probably should have said that up front.
Yeah, so my 2 cents, here's my suggestion, is that in the write-up of what's in the basic services, the lump sum number, put an exclusion that says, civil attendance at meetings is not included. That will be billed on an hourly rate. Because I get it, like, we almost want to keep it out of the lump sum number because we don't know what that effort's going to be. But at least Doran Whittier's time is covered in the lump sum number.
Yes, it is.
But civil owns preparing the documents for those meetings as part of the lump sum, or just preparing the drawings, not necessarily presentation material.
So they own the design.
What does civil own for those meetings in the base bid?
They own the design
Yeah.
and they own submitting what the planning board has documented as requirements, right? So the planning board has a list of documents that they require for submission. And the civil engineer owns putting all that together. If for whatever reason, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if they come back and say, we really don't understand the underground stormwater drainage, can you provide different types of calculations or different types of site sections, if you will, that show the inverts and everything? In other words, you're doing a grading section, or if they require us to go get third-party calculations for the stormwater drainage. We would come back to you before starting that work and we would say, this is going to go against that $25,000 allowance. But
Yeah.
anything that they require to be submitted is going to be provided because it's all part of the design documents. It's when we start getting into, additional documentation for permitting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's above and beyond what's required for the town permit, right? So if we get into it and the planning board starts asking for all kinds of things, the civil engineers protecting themselves saying, we're happy to do it, but it's going to cost a little extra money.
Right.
Right.
I think that's a fine way to do it. I think maybe clarifying, it probably shouldn't say bid at all. And it should say,
Yep.
maybe a little bit more clarification of what permit phase services are. And it might even be helpful to say, here's the number of hours and reproduction, we assume to come up with this $25,000, but when we bill against that $25,000, we just need some sort of like write-up of, hey, we attended 3 in-person meetings and we prepared these materials so that we can.
Yeah, I would expect you would see an invoice, Kevin, from the civil to Doran Whittier as kind of the backup. Does that make sense, Don?
Yeah, not just an invoice, but
Yeah, not right. An invoice with a name and an hours and a rate kind of thing.
I
Is there
think
a markup on those services, or are they straight hourly rate?
Those would come straight through from, with niche through us.
But you, like what they bill you, you're marking up 10% or you're not marking it up. It doesn't matter. We just.
I mean,
we know the number.
typically.
Yeah, it does.
Well,
Typically, we do.
I mean,
mark
it
up
is their consultant, Blythe, you know, I mean.
Yeah, they mark up their consultants, right? That's what we've agreed to.
Yeah, typically we mark up our consultants 10%.
Because they've got to coordinate them and manage. Right. So,
Right.
I mean, look, it's a relatively small number compared to the total amount. I don't want to nitpick
So,
everything. I think we just want to know what's in that number.
Yeah.
So that when we know what it's being spent against, it's reasonable.
Yeah,
So
what we'll
the
do
other
is
important thing to recognize, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the other important thing to recognize is these numbers are already in the project budget outside of our fees up in the line items of the project budget. So like since the beginning, we've said that permitting was $25,000 up in the soft cost site development section of the spreadsheet for the total project cost. So this
Ron,
isn't
at this
something-
point, I don't think we're arguing the number. I think we're arguing we didn't understand what the number was.
Yeah.
I
no,
think
So I
so
think
what
I
we'll
think
do-
you just need to, I think you need to change the language for instead of
Yeah.
bid permit phase services, say extended civil permit phase services. Right?
Yeah, we'll work to explain that better.
And
Sorry.
on the point you just made, Ron, could you please send me the full spreadsheet? Because all I have is what's in the feasibility study. So there's no way for me to go back or any of us to go back and really look at these
Sure, I can send it to you. Yep.
in an Excel format, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll make my last 2 questions quick. Fixtures, furnishings, and equipment procurement. I guess, and this might even be a question for either Doran Whittier or Vertex. How is that typically? I guess, why is it being presented as additional services budget? Just for my own edification, why is that not something that's typically included?
Sure, because we don't know how you're going to procure your furniture today. So this is basically everything that's going to come in after the building's done and put in place: desks, chairs, tables, file cabinets, things of that nature. What we carry as part of our basic services, all the room layouts. So we'll lay everything out. We'll work with the fire department and and you guys to say, yep, this is how we want things laid out. And what that does, that tells us where all our switches, our plugs, and power and everything else is going to be located within each room. We'll do room data sheets to show all the room layouts individually. We can also provide the selection, working with fire department and the procurement and the overseeing of the installation of the furniture. So the $85,000 that you're seeing there is a budget to do that. We also know that some towns are comfortable doing it on their own. Going through the state bidders list, we can go through, we've done it before, they can take care of it. Fine. If you guys want to take care of it, cool. At the same time, we've seen an owner hire an OPM to do it. And then we just kind of stay off to the side. So there's 3 different ways you can do it. This is if you ask us to do it, and it's a budget right now. What we'll do is when we get to that point, we would basically put a proposal together and present it to you for your approval or discussion.
Okay. That was, again, I think I've been dominating the questions, but does anybody else have questions about the proposal?
I'd be interested to understand from John what he thinks about, or what he suggests about the furniture procurement process.
So,
If I could, I think that it's good to have the design aspect through the architect, through their interior designer, because you have to fit everything into the spaces. There'll be a furniture drawing so that you can coordinate your electrical, your outlets, your heating elements and so forth. So you're not, putting lateral files up in front of data outlets when the furniture people come in. So you need that design. You need to have some kind of idea what you want. And then you've got the whole fabric and colors selection situation. If you can get to that point, then the actual procurement through a WB Mason or a Red Thread or something like that can be done directly by the town. But you have to have basically the spec or the scope of work to be able to give to them, unless you want to start working directly with the furniture people to do the design. But then you have that coordination coming back to make sure that what they're doing coincides with what the design doc is going to show for your infrastructure of the building.
So picking up on that, Steve and Blythe, sorry if I'm jumping in here, but I think I kind of agree with Steve. I was going to go down the road of, I think it would be great to get an FF&E list from the architecture team, and then we can talk about how we want to procure it, right? I don't know, maybe Chief will have staff members that can do it. Maybe Matt and his team will do it. But I think at the very least, we need a list and we need the equipment specified. So I guess the question at that point goes to Doran Whittier, is that would come out of this 85,000?
Yes.
Like an FF&E list? Yeah.
Yeah, because what we would do, we would sit down and go through and show you 3 to 5 different pieces and go through the fabrics, as Steve mentioned, and basically say, this is what we want to go with. And we would work hard to have it fall within the state bidders list. So it makes it easy on you if you want to go ahead and procure it on your own.
So a follow-up question at that point, should we break this number into 2 then and say there's the FF&E specification and then there's the procurement? And at that point, should we just go with you guys for the procurement, or do you have an opinion on that one? I mean, is it worth breaking the number out, or is it going to be like $80,000 for the FF&E list and $5,000 for the procurement?
Well, there's also a number to make sure that everything arrives on site and is not broken. So after the vendors arrive and assemble all this furniture and it's all in place, our team goes through and makes sure that it's all put together and you got the right stuff. Does that make sense?
Right.
So there's
Right,
an on-site component.
Yeah, that's if you want us to do it.
Yeah.
And
So
if we just do the design and selection up front, we're okay with that too, and hand it over to Vertex, take it through procurement and the oversight of the installation.
yeah, I mean, that's something we should probably talk about as a group. Like maybe the chief will have his staff do it, or maybe, again, Matt and his staff can do it too. So maybe what I'm suggesting here is maybe we break this number into 2. There's the FF&E specification, and then there's the procurement.
Well,
So again, this is
gotta be
something,
through the state bid list. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
guys, this is also going to be something that we are months away from needing to make this decision. We'll start to design layout of furniture within a building, within a few months, but we don't have to worry about what it actually is for a little bit after that. So again, having that number, we can have that number broken down. We can have them give us another proposal later once we know a little bit more and have had a chance to talk about it. The good news is the base services that we're talking about will get you furniture layout in the room. And then we can talk about, okay, how do we get that next level later? I do think I like give us the list and then we can go get it. Because when you think about it, at the end of the day, we're not talking about a ton of furniture at the end. We're talking about desks and chairs and beds and recliners for the day room. The lockers and things like that are part of the building. Those things will get bought as through the construction contract. So we're really talking about a finite amount of furniture here.
Well, you're all gonna have, I mean, FF&E also includes, any kind of new exercise equipment that you may want, that you're not taking from what you have now. Potentially kitchenwares, because, you may want plates and spoons and all that kind of stuff. So there's a few, everybody says furniture, but there's FF&E is a few other things. So it could be multiple vendors. And there's got to be some thought put into it.
Any other questions on the proposal from anyone?
I got I guess a few follow-ups, right? So I think we covered most of my questions in the additional services, but I do think the temporary fire department living quarters, and I think we're all of the opinion that we're going to do this. So it'd be good to know what a number would be to, I guess this is to design the interior of the shed, right? Or of the trailers.
So Aaron, this is something that Steve and I talked about, and I talked a little bit to Blythe about this too. I don't think we're at the point yet of knowing, like, if you're going to go ahead and say that we're going to go ahead and design a new modular building, like we're going to start from scratch, and it's going to be 2,000 square feet, and it's going to be, Triumph is going to build it, and we're going to need Doran Whittier to lay out a schematic design and do it, 2,000 square feet at, $500, $1 million building? Or are we talking about going to the home people, the guys that do the modular homes, when someone's house burns down, and trying to find something like that? I don't think we know the approach yet entirely. And that's, I think, why Doran Whittier put a big TBD on that one, because this could go from us needing support from them for civil, for site utilities and stuff, for whatever's going to be installed, all the way up to, are they designing schematic for a full modular new build? And if you're, where does that kind of play with the budget? Resale if you're going to buy it, or leasing if you're going to just rent it. This is,
I hear you, John.
we're not there yet.
Yeah, so I guess I've got two concerns with that. Is one is we were hoping to sort of expedite this, right? So I feel like we're behind on this one. We need to move forward. And two is the $500,000 number that we've been kicking around is only the first piece of the pie. It's, it's not going to be 500,000 for this trailer that we thought we were going to buy, right?
Well, so that's, and Steve knows a little bit more about this than I do. I think I don't have my arms around yet exactly what we're buying yet. We need to improve the situation for the firefighters that are there. Absolutely 100%. But I don't think we know the how yet. I don't think we know the what exactly. I mean, the stuff that, just like the stick built market is up, the modular market's through the roof because the stick built market's through the roof.
All right. So I don't want to derail this meeting here, and I understand the TBD, but I think we need a subject of our next meeting needs to be, what is the plan for the temporary housing, and what's the schedule, and what's the cost?
I think that's a great idea.
I think that definitely needs to be an agenda item on the next meeting for sure.
And the big part of that is, where's it going to be placed based on construction, what we're going to do, and our issues with setbacks and so forth.
Okay.
Is it temporary? Is it permanent? There's how long you're going to use it really dictates whether you buy it or you just rent it.
Do we have any issues with zoning or planning in terms of where we need to put it?
Yeah.
Question for Tuesday night.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about the parking lot side, that may be an issue because it becomes a new structure.
But is it an issue if it's a temporary structure? That's a great question.
We need to figure all this out, right? And we're already down to $1.5 million to solve it, right? So that's what we got to figure it out.
Right. Yeah, I think any information that Doran Whittier and Vertex can kind of dig up related to it before the next meeting. But I think we definitely need to discuss it to whatever extent we can at the next meeting to get that's got to be a focus. as well.
Chief, what are the dimensions of where you're in right now?
We have
Very,
that.
very small. Yeah, I think it's like 700. It's ridiculously small.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
So the only other comment I had was on what we were approving for the basic services, but I think Blythe already sort of said we're kind of approving it a step at a time. So we're only talking about approving the schematic design. So
Yeah, but I think we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable for the numbers through bidding so that,
yeah,
you know,
it's
as
good to
we
see
hit
the
each
numbers.
phase, we can just keep going, you know.
That's it for me.
Matt, I see your hand is raised. Do you have a question?
I do. So I was reviewing this, seeing that the furniture was broken out a little bit. It made me wonder what we're doing with the IT, security, and the fire communications. If that's, I know it's built in. I believe, is that going to be additional fees if we have that run through the contract?
So the design, I actually asked that question, Matt, to Dora Whittier, and they confirmed that the design for all of those systems is included. So whether it's owner supplied or contractor supplied through the specs, Dora Whittier owns the design of station alerting, audiovisual, paging, all of those systems we would expect to be in there. I don't think we're at the point yet of, and again, when we talked about the interview, I think we talked a lot about building it into the contractor's contract is a plus. But I don't think we're at the point now, we don't have to make that decision yet because they haven't designed it yet. The procurement of it, but the procurement of it we'll talk about later, but they own the design of it, which is the important piece.
So, but there's also like the design for FF&E too, but that's not going to necessarily take it out to procurement. So I'm just trying to figure out if that the full scope and is it fully involved? Because I understand the FF&E, it's an owner selection. Well, so is the security and IT to an extent. So with that, I just was curious if there's any additional fees. And one other thing that I have been thinking about at nights that we've never talked about is lightning protection. We've had a lot of problems. Is that included?
Yes.
And that is? Okay. But do you understand my question, I guess, is the furniture is included, but it's not fully. There's additional fees. We want you guys to run it all the way through. So is the IT and security all the way?
So if I can try to give you all the piping, the wires, the boxes, all the infrastructure is included. So what we would need to work with you on is the town would probably buy all the switches. So whatever phone system you're interested in purchasing, whether it's an extension of a town-wide system. Like, I don't know if at town hall, you can just pick up the phone and dial 3-number extension and get you at your place, Matt. Do you know what I mean?
So yeah,
Phone,
so we bought all of our NEC equipment for this building. So that's not that, I guess. Yes, I understand that.
Right. So then to answer your question, what we would do is sit down with you and your NEC contractor, right? Your NEC phone provider.
Mm-hmm.
And we would make sure we got the right kind of category 6 wire running to the faceplates. We'd make sure we get the right patch panels. We'd make sure that they're getting the switches that we need and that they're located in the IT room. And we would be designing the racks, if you will, for those switches to go in and the location and all of that. We would work with you and NEC to get that done. And that's all under the contract.
Okay.
Same thing on the security side. We're going to run all the, the data wiring and everything else for all of these systems that we've talked about, right? The card access and everything else. But if you have preferred vendors, or if you want to go out and procure this on your own, or you want us to provide you with a specification for the CCTV system, we can do that. And what's also included, what's that?
I guess I really wanted to be included because there's massive, I know there's benefits to going outside, but there's also massive benefits to having the GC have it under their schedule to make sure everything's time coordinated. And if we did it outside of their schedule, it can create coordination and time delays.
Absolutely. And
so-
that's, so when we work with you, if you have, like, let's say you wanted to use an NEC phone system, but you want the general contractor to just deal with it, right? You don't want to have to deal with it. We can bid that proprietary, or we can bid it as a bid alternate, so that on the bid day, you can see what the low bid was for a phone system that's equal to yours, and then see the bid alternate number. And then you can decide to take the bid alternate or not. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So you can make that decision as to whether or not you and your IT folks want to do this work, from like an install to a configuration to a balancing, or you can have us write the spec so that the general contractor actually buys it and installs it.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
just need, we need to make sure Ton's involved in that. He's been in my ear a couple times when we get to a point where we're dealing with that stuff, or anything that needs to be, that IT needs to be involved with. You know, he wants to have his stamp on it, because obviously he's going to be, you know, maintaining it, owning it, fixing any issues after it's all done. So, you know, he's really responsive. So I really want to get him in the loop when we get to that point.
So basically, the design of the systems is included with Doran Whittier. How it's going to get installed is a decision for the future, whether it's going to be under the GC as a turnkey, or whether it's going to be with a vendor that you may use that's on the state bid list, correct?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but in terms of just comparisons, the email from John this afternoon also had some comparisons of other projects and the percentage of fee that might be helpful to the committee in terms of the overall cost.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Yes.
So put this together, a request to kind of just show some comparisons between some other projects. 2 other Doran Whittier projects we're working on, and 1 other context project that we have, you know, complete fees built through. And, you know, you can see Norfolk at the top. You know, again, there's lots of things that go into this. Okay, tried to make this as apples to apples as I could, making sure not building for any, showing any cost for feasibility. And if you look at kind of the combined totals at the end, you know, the fee being proposed here is, you know, it's in the ballpark. You know, again, what someone calls a basic, someone else may call an extra, you know, depending on how their agreements work with their subconsultants, you know. So that's why I wanted to show both, but then the combined number is really probably the best place to look. And the other thing I'll say is that, you know, if you look, the trend here is the smaller the project, the higher the fee. And that's small projects typically cost a little bit more than a larger project, just because, you know, we see it with our OPM fees, we see it with, you know, design fees. You know, it's just smaller projects. There is as much to coordinate on a smaller project as there is on a larger one. I mean, Don, I'll throw this out to you if you have any comments. I know we talked about this.
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up nicely, John. I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have, but just so the group knows, we do build our budgets from the bottom up. So we assign staff through every phase, every week, throughout the duration of the entire project. So, and I think someone may have commented, wow, your construction administration percentage is high. Well, we look at the duration and we look at the level of effort that we do during CA. And I think we ended up somewhere in the 40% range here. And that's higher than you normally would see for a design fee, because we see that as the most important spot to have a lot of money placed, because this is public procurement in Massachusetts, and we know how challenging it can be at times. So, so we set our fees up that way where, 25, 30% you may see from many other architects. We're up to in the 40% range. So we actually hurt ourselves in some ways because we back end our fee as opposed to putting a lot of it up front, which you could see in some other proposals. But yeah, we feel pretty comfortable with where we are with the proposal, with the hours that we put together. We're just about 10,000 hours for the job. And if you take the 10,000 hours and look at the number of the fee allocated to us, because remember, our consultants are in here too, right? We have the civil, the structural, the MEP, fire protection, landscape, cost estimator, all within here too. We average over the job about $125 per hour. So that's from me right down to the junior drafter who may do some help out on the job a little bit, but we think it's a good fair proposal.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, when I first saw it, I just immediately kind of looked at percent of construction costs for the basic services and was assuming, usually don't see much more than 10%. This was obviously a little higher. I mean, not a lot higher. But I think some of your explanation of the construction administration helps to explain some of that. And I think John's table here is good, that it is in line with other projects, especially considering some of the magnitude of those costs that, there is definitely some merit to, there's some economy of scale with some of those bigger projects that it's a similar level of coordination, but it's spread over bigger construction dollars. So
Sure.
My gut is, I think it's a little on the high side, but it seems reasonable. I don't know what anybody else's opinion is. Does anybody have an opinion?
Kevin?
Yeah, I agree, Kevin, that I'm typically used to seeing about the 10% range, but it's not altogether that much higher than it. I thought it was reasonable.
Kevin, this is Mac. May I speak?
Sure. Sorry that the
No, that's
ribbon
okay.
is smaller with this up on the screen. I didn't see you there.
No, sure. No, I like to think I'm conservative and want to keep a close track. I'm actually a very large fan of the construction administration because that's where the last project went really poorly. And I think having constant oversight, that's been what I've been harping. If you ask Blythe, I harp about it all the time. That's my big thing. So as much as I only seen the dollars, I think that's money is very well spent. One question I did have though is if there are delays in this job, if we have union strikes, which we've had before, and is this based on a 12-month? And if it is based on a 12-month and we have to go into extended months, God forbid, is there like a set fee that you charge for additional monthly services, or how's that work?
The construction duration we're assuming is 16 months right now.
Okay.
So a lot of it depends on, like, if there's a work stoppage and no one's doing anything, like literally nothing, then I don't know how we could justify billing you additional services. But if there are some sort of issues that we have to, have some additional hours put into, we probably want to talk to you about it. But just so you know, the way we work typically is, unless there's something extraordinary, this is the fee you're going to pay, right? We very rarely come back looking for more money through basic services, unless you somewhere along the line during construction you say, hey, you know what? Let's change this roof line. Extraordinary, right? But we kind of pride ourselves on, we give you a fee, we stand by it.
Thank you. That was it for me.
Any other comments related to the fee or the proposal?
I'm
I guess I-
comfortable with it.
Oh, go ahead, Blythe. What?
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. So I guess I would ask for a motion that we can take this to the select board. I think pending some of the changes that we discussed tonight, revising the language of the bid / permit phase services and the FF&E procurement, kind of breaking those out a little bit, as well as just clarifying what civil scope is in the basic services related to permitting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a long-winded motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, who's that?
Who's Justin?
Thank you. I just was looking up.
All right. Blythe Robinson,
Yes,
Justin Yanosik,
Yes.
John Kent,
Yes.
Chief Kinney,
Yes.
Chris Baker,
Yes.
Aaron Hunt,
Aye.
Kevin Champagne, yes. All right, thank you, guys. So before we go to the minutes, I just wanted to touch on briefly kind of upcoming meeting schedule. We've been meeting every 2 weeks. I just wanted to take everybody's temperature if we still think that's necessary. It seems like maybe we still want to keep that. In my opinion, maybe we still want to keep that over the next couple of months with the project moving so quickly, unless we feel like we don't need to at some point. But I guess I would like to keep going every 2 weeks. I know maybe not everybody can meet every 2 weeks, but I think as a committee, if most of us still can, that would be my suggestion. Any thoughts on that? Okay. So we'll keep Wednesdays at 6 o'clock.
that would be the 19th and February 2nd would be the next 2 dates.
Yeah. Okay. And Blythe, do you need me to attend the select board meeting that?
It probably would help by Zoom. I think we'll probably still be by Zoom.
Well, yeah, I'm coming back from a trip the day before, so I'd probably go Zoom anyway, just because of
Sure.
possible exposures.
It's going to be a long meeting. There's a bunch of things to do, so I'll keep in touch with you about timing so you're not there longer than you need to be.
Okay.
But do you need us and Doran Whittier available for that too, or no?
Let me get back to you about that. Let me talk to the chairman. I think you at least, because you're advising the town, that might be helpful.
Sure.
Again, we can time that.
I have
Okay.
one conflict. I have one conflict for February 2nd. That is my son's birthday.
Oh, come on.
So
We'll bring him along.
Oh, come on.
You can attend the meeting.
I
Select
mean,
board will get him a cake.
Be another one next year. Come on.
look, that's one of the benefits of having 7 people on the board, is that if a couple of people can't make a meeting, we can still go forward. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 o'clock, Blythe, or for those
That
we stand
seems
at
to
6?
work for everybody.
Yeah,
We
I
can
think
stick
I
to
think
6
we can
o'clock.
do 6 o'clock.
Yep.
When you sent this one out, I'm like, there's no way it'll be 3 hours. Good job.
Well,
Good job.
yeah, thank you, Vertex and Doran Whittier. I know this was a long one, and thank you for kind of going through your fees. It's just, this was a big piece of it, so I appreciate you working through all that with us.
Yeah, we have to tell the select board, we really worked you over for it.
We were on there for hours. Okay, so if there's no other discussion items, I'll move to the minutes action item. So please consider approval of the minutes. Chris, have you had a chance to review them?
Yeah, I reviewed the December 15th and December 21st meeting minutes. Didn't find any errors and had no comments. So I'd like to ask for a motion to approve both sets of those minutes.
Oh, moved.
Second.
Second.
All right.
Yep,
I'll-
you have to go
I'll
around.
go in order of my screen, I guess. Blythe Robinson,
Yes,
Justin Yancek,
Yes.
John Kent,
Yes.
Kevin Champagne,
Yes.
Chief Kenny,
Yes.
and Aaron Hunt.
Hi.
All right, looks like we're good.
Any other items that anyone wants to discuss, or should we put everybody out of their misery? John, did you raise your hand? You wanted to keep going? Oh, I think Matt did just raise his hand, actually. Matt?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Should we get a working group? Should we get a working group to start forwarding, going on the trailer? Start working on that. Maybe next Wednesday, start doing working groups on that to see what we need and what the options are going to be and what it's going to look like on the site. Would that be a good idea?
Well, I definitely think we want to put it on our main agenda for the next meeting, but perhaps, I know you guys meet every week. We can just discuss anything that you've gathered in that time.
I think, Ron, if I'm understanding our correspondence, we were going to resume the working group meetings next Wednesday
Correct. Yep.
at 3.
Great.
And so on that note, Blythe, we're taking tonight as kind of a notice to proceed, even though we don't have a signed amendment. Do you know what I mean? So we'll get the paperwork off to everybody.
Yeah, I just can't
or-
execute until the,
Yeah,
Right.
I also
Right.
need to work with our attorney to make sure that they're comfortable with the language of the amendment. So if you could get me what you propose on a particular document, I want to get those off to council tomorrow.
Yeah, and we have, I'm sorry to belabor this meeting, but our contract basically said, the contract's written for the full construction project. And it said to be determined. Are we simply doing an amendment that says paragraph such and such to be revised to read as follows? And we fill in the dollar
I think so,
amounts?
but I will talk with her tomorrow.
Okay, great.
okay.
Yep.
So yes, we'll start meeting again next week. If you guys could resend out the meeting invite and stuff, so we get it on our calendars.
Yep.
And we'll talk about the trailer.
We might need to just talk through too, whether we do that through Teams or whether we do it in person. I think doing it through Teams as of right now is probably the best option, given the COVID spike. I know I had a little run of it through my department. We're getting on the other side of it, and I don't want to start another one.
So we should meet in the trailer. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm
Exactly what he's saying.
Yeah. And I would suggest these meetings too are remote until we vote otherwise. So.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. That's it. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
A second.
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 Blythe Robinson,
Yes.
Justin Enosik,
Yes.
John Kent,
Yes.
Chief Kinney,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
and Aaron Hunt.
Yes.
Ivan Champagne, yes. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Everybody.
Good night.
All right.